the December 7th, 2022 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission. This meeting will be held in a hybrid fashion. Attendance can be in person or through GoToMeeting. For instructions on how to join the meeting remotely, please see the agenda posted on the town website. Also, anyone who intends to record either audio and or video of any of the proceedings of the meeting tonight, please inform the chair. So we have a long agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is discussion and vote on board reorganization.
Can I
Yes, sir.
make just a quick announcement, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind? I just want to recognize the passing of David Creston. He was a member of the Conservation Commission quite a few years ago, former chair, very strong environmentalist for the town of Harwich. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Brad.
So the business of reorganization is before us. I would like to entertain any motions on establishing a new chair since the previous chair has resigned.
I'll nominate Jim.
Thank you very much, Wayne. While I appreciate the nomination, I'm not sure I'm the proper one to be the chair, and I would like to nominate John.
So I actually think first I have to ask for a second.
I'll second
There
it.
is a second or not for Wayne's motion.
I would second Wayne's motion.
Now we can have discussion.
Okay, now I'll have discussion. And again, I really thank everybody for the nomination and the confidence. And while, I am always, willing to chair a meeting if it's appropriate, I think that the chairman of this committee should go to John.
And I'll second that.
If I could just add a quick comment, it's not a rule, but it has been a tradition, I think, to have the vice chair elevate to chairmanship under these circumstances. So again, not a rule, but it has been a tradition. So I would support the notion of having John take the chairmanship.
And I've seconded it.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate your confidence, but strictly speaking, I think we have to, unless somebody thinks otherwise, I think we have to first act on Wayne's motion. So I would call for a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
All those opposed?
Nay.
I'm stuck in the middle, yeah.
You can abstain.
You can abstain.
Abstain.
So, and I will abstain, so that's 3-2 against Wayne's motion.
Okay. So now, John, if it's appropriate, I would like to make a motion that you become the chairman.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? No discussion, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm abstaining, so thank you for your confidence. I will attempt to behave appropriately.
Congratulations.
Is that a promise?
Or a threat.
Yeah, right. Okay, so now on to real business.
Well, wait a minute, don't we need to elect
You need a new
Vice
vice chair.
chairman.
We
vice
do,
chair?
we do. So, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would like to nominate Jim as the vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay. I would accept that if it's voted by the committee.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Any opposed? Okay, so Jim is vice chair.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. So, next we're on to the business of applicants for request for determination of applicability. The first is Dan Shea, 400 Lower County Road, map 13, parcel S2C2, septic upgrade of 2 systems. We have the applicant.
Good evening. Cement here on, oh, I'm sorry, getting. Cement here, AGM site. Hi, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Not really.
It's
Okay.
kind of, it's cutting in and out a bit, though.
Okay, let me try to turn my speakers down a little bit while I'm talking. I seem to get a little feedback here, but anyhow, Cement's AJM Site Design representing the Shea family. It's a 1 acre lot on Lower County Road. We've got the northern portion of the lot is a wetland area. We've got 2 existing dwellings on this lot. We've got a 4-bedroom main house and a 2-bedroom cottage. We have 2 separate septic systems on this lot as well. The main house is served by a couple cesspools, and the cottage is served by a more conventional system, a tank and a leach field. They're looking to sell this property, and so they've had an inspection on the system. The system's too close to the groundwater. So what we're proposing is upgrading the system to a combined system for the two houses. We're proposing a septic tank and pump chamber kind of between the 2 houses. The closest point of the tanks is about 72 feet from the edge of the wetland. And we've got a new proposed leach field, which is a pressure dosing system, which is outside the 100-foot buffer. It's about 101 at its closest point to the edge of the wetlands, and then extends further from there down the side of the main house, down the driveway. We're providing all the siltation barriers we believe are required for this work to protect the wetlands. We do unfortunately have to take out a fairly large maple tree, an older maple tree that's along the side of the house. I mean, it does have some breakout in the tree itself, but it's just kind of, I guess, part of the deal, unfortunately. And there's some gas line relocation as well on this, but I would be happy to answer any questions you have. It's pretty straightforward upgrade. I think kind of improvements all around on this one.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Fairly straightforward. The current system's in failure because it was too close to groundwater. A new combined system with better protection for the wetland resource. I would recommend that, it's too bad to lose that massive maple. It's a beautiful tree. I would recommend that you plant with another maple, native maple within the 100-foot wetland buffer upon completion of the project or spring of 2023. So I'd recommend approval with a -2 and 3 determination, also with the condition that no fertilizers or chemicals are to be used on the property. I believe the whole property, except for maybe the very front, right on the road, is within our jurisdiction. It's a common condition that we're putting on all projects now.
I think that's perfectly cool. I think Dan is there in front of you guys today. I don't think he would have any objection to replanting another tree, or certainly the fertilizer condition.
Okay, so is that it, Amy?
Yes, thank you.
Wayne?
I don't have anything. Looks pretty straightforward to me. No comment.
No comment.
Nope, I see this being pretty straightforward as well.
None.
I just have one question, which is, the tree in question, is that a Norway maple?
I couldn't tell based on,
I don't know, to be honest with you. Amy, do you know?
Okay, that's fine. Just, you suggested that it should be
a native
a
maple.
native maple, so that's fine. Any further comment or discussion? Anything from attendees here tonight? Okay, do we have a motion?
Sure. I will move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 400 Lower County Road, map 13, parcel S2-C2, with a -2 and 3 determination, and under the condition that the tree that is to be removed be replaced with a native maple tree.
Well, second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability from Victoria Luckman, 11 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel K1-1 for a septic upgrade.
Thank you.
Good evening. Glenn Harrington from GeoCape Environmental Consultants, representing 11 Dunes Road for the septic upgrade, which was necessary. The property is being transferred, and the septic failed upon inspection. The 2 leaching pits were too close to groundwater. So the existing system right now is a 2,000-gallon H20 tank in the driveway. The leach pits were set down in and along the driveway, and the proposed soil absorption system is 5 500-gallon chambers, H20 rated, with 4 feet of stone around them to facilitate the 6-bedroom dwelling. Back in '91, when this property was developed, there was no AE zone that came from the north. There is now, because of the newer maps of 2014. So the AE flood zone that comes from the north from Allen's Harbor, and with the topography of the front yard, a coastal bank had to be defined based upon the slopes in the front yard, and there's also the 0.2% annual flood chance hazard just above that as well. To facilitate the soil absorption system and the being a long trench, the water line will have to be rerouted around it, because right now it would go right through the system. Do you have any questions?
Anything else? Amy?
Nope, similar to the last one, it's in failure because it's too close to groundwater, and they're gonna upgrade it. Excuse me. You are going one more bedroom larger, correct?
I'm sorry?
Are you going larger by 1 bedroom? Is that what I'm hearing?
There are 6 existing in
6
the home.
proposed?
Yeah,
Okay.
the floor plans definitely show 6 primary.
Okay. That's more of a Board of Health thing, I just wasn't sure what I heard, what I heard. This property is unique in that you have a coastal dune on one side on Nantucket Sound, and on the other side, you have a coastal bank, landward of Oyster Creek due to topography that actually lands on this property. So the new existing and new septic would be, approximately, what did we say? How many feet from the wetland, from the top of bank?
It's about 57 feet from the top of bank.
But the actual wet area of Oyster Creek is much farther away as well as
Yes,
the
it's
dune.
about 240 feet from
Yep.
the BVW at Allen's Harbor.
This is mostly going under the driveway, a little bit into lawn area. You do have a couple of large pitch pines somewhat close, so similar to my recommendation with the last one, if you end up losing any trees, to replant with a native, not necessarily a pitch pine, but replant with a native with my guidance at a 1-to-1 ratio, and the no fertilizers or chemical within the flood zone or 100-foot buffer zones on this property. And I would recommend approval with a -2 and 3.
Okay. Comments from the commissioners? Wayne?
The only thing I'd like to see is on your notes here about the existing leach pit, it says to be pumped and removed and/or abandoned. We want to scratch the abandoned parts. We want them pumped and removed for the leach pits.
Okay, one was within the leaching, and that one would be removed. The other one is next to the driveway. You want that one
Oh, yeah,
removed?
any of those leach pits that are, existing ones need to be taken out and
You want them removed?
yeah, and filled in with clean dirt.
Done?
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Al?
No comments.
Nope, I'm good, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Brad? Stan?
None.
Any
No
comments?
comment, no comment.
I don't have any comments either. Any discussion from anyone else attending? Okay, can I have a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 11 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel K1-1, with a -2 and -3 determination, and the condition that if any trees are to be removed, they'd be replaced at a 1-to-1 ratio with native trees.
Second.
Discussion?
Well, don't forget the septic pit removal.
Yeah, and I can add that to my motion that,
All right.
I assume you second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Do you like me to submit a revised plan with that note change on the notes?
That would be great.
That would
Do
be
we have 3 copies?
Okay,
That'd be great.
I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next is a request for determination of applicability from Jameson Nye, Pleasant Bay Community Voting, 2285 Route 28, map 119, parcel N7-3, for a kelp pilot study.
We have a presentation, can we do the PowerPoint?
Yes, Matt, they have a PowerPoint that you should have for Pleasant Bay Community Voting, if we could put that up. And I'll shut one light off, sound good?
Oh, great.
Can you identify yourselves for the
Yes.
record, too, please?
I'm Karen Malkus Benjamin, and I work with Jamie.
And I'm Jameson Nye.
We're here to present, or I'm just going to start by discussing our project in general. We're proposing to grow kelp in Pleasant Bay, which you probably know is a shallow estuary. We're thinking between, if we can get started in December through April. Next slide, if you don't mind. Great. So why grow kelp? Kelp is beneficial and valuable. Growing kelp is a global industry with many useful products. Kelp aquaculture is supported by the Nature Conservancy and other environmental protection groups. Our project will add to local knowledge started by Chatham Kelp and the project in the Herring River here in Harwich. Kelp is a winter crop, so it does not interfere with boating or other fisheries. Kelp can help remove nutrients and carbon, and growing kelp is low-tech, so it's employing natural systems to help solve human-created pollution problems. And there's some examples there of the current research going on about kelp and its use in remediation. It's kind of a hot topic right now. And the bottom one is called Seaweed Solutions. It's a recent webinar from the Woods Hole Oceanographic that is great. So if anyone is interested in learning more, I would recommend that. Next slide, please. All right, so kelp is part of our history in Cape Cod and in Maine. Here's a picture, actually, it's hard to see, but that black and white picture is from the Gulf of Maine from 1882. Somebody has a lot of kelp being hauled off the beach with a cow. And then there's a picture from a recent year. The guy there with all the kelp is in the Gulf of Maine also. In 2022, they bring in a big harvest from Maine. And it's part of our future. So part of the past and part of our future. They're even suggesting that kelp can be very helpful in reducing the carbon that's creating the acidification in the ocean to protect shellfish. So they're creating these multi-faceted remediation projects with both kelp and shellfish. Next slide, please. You probably know kelp is in everything pretty much. It's in toothpaste, shampoos, salad dressing, puddings, cakes, dairy products, frozen foods, pharmaceuticals. It's a great source of iodine. It's been used to make some biofuels, but it's also by itself just a lovely edible vegetable. So it's, I would recommend if you ever get a chance, it's this, particularly the one that's around here is a little bit sweet, so if you like vegetables. Next slide, please. The goals of our project are the sort of scientific side that we're interested in is to collect water temperature and light availability with a data logger at the kelp site. We're going to collect weekly data about growth rate of the kelp in this shallow situation. We're going to also collect data about the health of the blades and measuring the thickness of the biofouling and the size of the stipes and the holdfast. There's stipes and holdfast are the parts that hold it down, the blade's the big part. So the biofouling is usually on the blade, but these are all things we'll measure to see how healthy it is. We also want to assess the logistics and feasibility of growing kelp in the winter in this nutrient-rich, sandy-bottomed estuary. And part of this is also share our data and methods with local students and adults, of course, too, but to make sort of people understand different ways you can do stewardship in our environment. Next slide, thank you. Our propagation setup, our little kelp nursery, it's actually in the kitchen of the hillside building over at the boating areas there. We get sterile water from Woods Hole Oceanographic. They kindly donated that to us. Jamie actually drives down there and brings a big barrel of sterile seawater back. We just have two 10-gallon tanks. You can probably see them in the picture. 2 chillers that keep the water below, well, around 51 degrees Fahrenheit. They're the 2 black things at the bottom. And we have spools with nylon string and then fluorescent lighting, which we use obviously to keep it growing. And you can't see, the one in the back is there, but there's also one on the front that we put in when we've loaded the tanks. Next slide, please. So we're using Cape Cod kelp to propagate from. We source them in Sagamore near the canal. We use the mature blades, which are called sporophytes, and we collect from them from the reproductive tissue. We remove all the fouling organisms that are on them and sterilize the tissue with iodine. And then these spores, which then become the adult sporophytes, are grown in sterile seawater in those tanks I showed you, or we had the picture up, on the spools. They actually are attached to the lines. Next slide. Here's Jamie creating the spools. It's that nylon thread. They go around and around. It's a sterile environment, so he's wearing gloves. And then to the right is a cool picture. It's going to be hard to see up. Those little black things are the new sporophytes. So they're very little when they start out. That's under a dissecting microscope. And the white stuff is the thread. So they're really kind of little cool character. We call them our babies. Kelp babies. Okay, next picture, please. Jamie kindly did a dive and did some benthic surveying at the spot we hope to put these out. There was no eelgrass, and I've checked with Holly Playstead, who works for the National Seashore, she for many years has monitored eelgrass in Pleasant Bay, and she's never seen eelgrass on this side, so that was good news. Next slide, please. And this is the information we've already presented to you in the RDA. There's the site where the map is unfortunately not very clear, but we're obviously going to put our project in the Harwich waters that are near Pleasant Bay's boating, or our property rather. And it's very close to an existing summer mooring field. There are going to be 3 mooring balls, 3 anchors attached with chain, and we will have breakaway lines between the mooring balls in case to avoid any entanglement. Very unlikely because we've never seen large mammals that close, but if the equipment for some reason would be taken away or if something strange happened, at least then nothing bad would happen in terms of entanglement. And that's my presentation. I'll hand over questions to Jamie. He's our technical whiz.
Do you guys have any questions? Sorry, I know that was kind of a lot, just taken all at once.
I think maybe we'll start with comments from Amy, and then commissioners will have a chance to comment or question.
So I don't have too many questions. I was fortunate to kind of go through the project with them a few times and feel like I know it pretty well. This is just a pilot project. It is a one-time, one-year project that they would start ASAP and go through April. So they did, I believe you talked to John Rendon, the harbor master. Everything is okay from a navigational standpoint for them as far as doing this between now and April. They went to the Pleasant Bay Alliance, and I believe a letter was in your packets or on Dropbox about that. A lot of the same comments that I have, that this is a one-time, one-year pilot project of only 2 15-foot sections of polyline between 3 mooring balls in about 8 feet of water. If you are successful and want to, which I hope you are, and you want to expand this, that is a whole other level of permitting through various agencies that we can talk about if and when we get there. So this is an RDA just for a one-time, one-year pilot project. Natural Heritage has deemed the project exempt from the review at this time. And I would recommend approval of this pilot study with a -2 determination and with the condition that you share your results with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No comment from me.
Any questions?
I just had a question. I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment or whatever it is, but this would be considered, if it's successful, it'd be considered aquaculture, correct?
In a sense, it's more of a small, since it's so small scale, what we're trying to get out of this is not necessarily to have a large yield of product. While we will be monitoring how well it grows, our idea is not to continue this to create a large-scale farm. A lot of it is all about stewardship and how we're going to use it for educational purposes and kind of show what small places can do just for the environment around us.
Well, I would be hopeful that it would become a
Right.
larger scale
Yeah.
aquaculture. Where I'm coming from is that, I don't know if agriculture has a lot of exemptions in the wetland bylaws, and I don't know if aquaculture has that.
Aquaculture does too. It would have to be determined to be aquacultural activity.
So that's where I'm leaning towards. So the permit process down the road may not be as large, would it be, if it was
Well,
exempt?
first it would have to be determined to be
Right.
aquaculture. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, that might be something you wanna do.
Okay.
And continue on, so that you don't have to, that's my viewpoint.
Oh, I appreciate that advice. Thank you.
Jim?
I have no comments.
I have no comments, thank you.
Just want to say, really interesting, good luck, and look forward to seeing report photographs, just to see how you do down the road.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
No additional comment.
I just have a question,
Yeah.
which is, there have been other attempts in the area, in Chatham and in Harwich, at growing kelp, and I was wondering if you can comment on the differences between what you see happening where you are and what's happened with other local attempts at growing kelp, some of which, my impression is have not met expectations.
Mhm.
And maybe you can talk a little bit about what you expect would be different where you are, aside from the fact that it's an estuary, not deep water, but can you talk about that a little,
Yeah.
please?
One of the main factors for the project in the Herring River not working was mostly just lack of nutrients. So Pleasant Bay, we have a lot of nitrogen in the water there, an excess amount. So when you look at what the kelp needs to grow, we have an excess of that. So the idea is that it would kind of flourish in this fertilized environment.
So is there data that supports that? I'm a little surprised at the contention that there's significantly less nutrients in the Herring River than in Pleasant Bay. I know that Pleasant Bay has a lot of nitrogen, and that's a challenge, but I thought that was an issue in the Herring River as well.
Well, the array is actually not in the river. It's
Right.
actually quite a bit farther out from the river. It couldn't be up closer to the mouth of the river for navigational purposes. So they believe that the reason it didn't do as well is because they're really outside of the main flow of nutrients coming out of that river. They're pretty far away from it.
I would just add that most sampling done in Nantucket Sound have not found to be an area that's short of nutrients. So certainly it's a eutrophied area as well.
Sure.
I think there's TMDLs for both Pleasant Bay and Herring River, so you could actually quantify the difference if you wanted to.
But those TMDLs are the Herring River itself as opposed to a mile offshore, right?
Right. But you could look at numbers and see how much excess nitrogen are in the two systems as a comparison.
Okay, well, any other discussion, any questions from attendees here, or questions or comments? Otherwise, I would Entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for Pleasant Bay Community Boating, 2285 Route 28, map 119, parcel N7-3, for a one-year pilot study with a -2 determination under the condition that at the termination of the study, that they report the results back to the Conservation Commission.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want us to email you when it's ready? It probably will be Friday.
That'd be perfect.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is a request for determination of applicability from Paul Vasile, 66 Doan Road, map 21, parcel W5-3 for the construction of a new dwelling.
I'll be representing.
You're on, literally.
Oh, great.
A little difficult from
Sorry,
Boston
that's
today,
strange setup for me.
the weather.
So your representative is online, Paul.
Yes, I think we have someone from BSC on the camera, correct?
Yeah,
On the
Hannah.
Zoom?
Yep. Yep. This is Hannah Raditz, wetland
Hi
scientist with
again, Hannah.
BSC.
And you are Paul Vasile.
I am Paul Vassal, I'm sorry,
I'm
thank you.
sorry,
Great to see everybody.
thank you. So, will you be presenting, or will?
I'm prepared to present.
I'm sorry,
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
we can hear you, yes.
Okay. Then I'll just go ahead and start a quick presentation and then we'll open up for discussion. If the plans are in front of you, then I won't pull it up on my screen, but it's a pretty simple project. This is a request for determination of applicability for the construction of a single-family dwelling. The only resource area that we have on site is a bordering vegetated wetland associated with a historic cranberry bog that's quite grown in. The 100-foot buffer from that wetland comes up across the property, but only about 1,250 square feet of clearing is going to be necessary at the very edge of that 100-foot buffer zone in order to mitigate for any migration of sediment across the site. A staked compost filter sock line will be installed at the limit of clearing, and no grading is proposed within the 100-foot buffer zone. That's all going to be kept back from that, as well as structures that looks quite close to the edge. The decks in the rear of the house will be out of the 100-foot buffer zone. All septic components also out of the 100-foot buffer zone, so it's a pretty simple project. I'll go ahead and open it up to discussion or any comment from our applicant.
Yes, thank you, Hannah, if I may.
Yes, please.
So, with the work that needs to be done on the site, because it's been growing for decades, forever, I don't know about the vegetation in the 100-foot buffer zone, but I would like to, I did a project last year at 15 Doan, where we put the saltwater grass in, or whatever I could do there, I would like to do, aside from the trees. And I'm gonna ask you a question, was there any, like a site visit to see what kind of stuff was back there? Because, as always, I'm willing to get rid of stuff and replace it with what should be there, and just kind of, not that I want necessarily a yard or a patio there, but anything that I can do to not have those, invasives and stuff, and where the deck is gonna be. So I'm sorry, that's all I had to add.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Yep, so the invasives are mostly concentrated up closer to the road, which is
Okay.
typical of disturbed sites. The wetlands, so once you get in past like 50 feet or so, it does thin out a bit. As you get and then obviously closer to the wetland, it's thinner, well, it gets thick towards the wetland, but in the middle of the property, it's not as thick with the invasives. Right now, I mean, you're asking to do work pretty much 83 feet from the wetland, then outside of the buffer. So where you have your limit of work is at 83 feet from the wetland. You're not asking to do anything past that line towards the wetland, so that's not being considered right now.
Correct.
The wetland's an abandoned cranberry bog. There is a drain that and there's a head wall there. I saw it years ago. And there's a drain that runs underneath this property, under the road, underneath properties across the street, and out to the headwaters of Allen's Creek, on the other side of the street. A couple of years ago, I don't remember if it was, I think it was the previous owner of the property, asked to
I don't own it
divert.
yet.
Oh, okay, sorry. Asked to divert the pipe, really to make it potentially more buildable, because the
Right.
pipe went straight. And so it was outside the 100-foot buffer zone, but they changed the layout of the pipe to go more towards the property line. It is not really known how well or if that drains still, but the pipe is intact. In if we have really high groundwater, if we have really, which, we can only hope that we get some more rain, but in the event that that bog gets full, this would be a way for that to drain out. So I would just caution you, whenever you're digging and filling, that you locate that pipe first. Make sure you do not disturb it. You could create future problems for yourself if it collapses and doesn't function anymore.
I plan on living there too, so that,
Okay. There you go. The structure is right on the 100-foot buffer zone line. That's a porch, and the deck, actually just on or outside of it. So there's really no new structures proposed within the 100-foot buffer zone. The work is to clear out approximately 1,250 square feet of area with between 83 and 100 feet away from the wetland. My recommendation would be to, along that limit of work line, when the project is done, is to do similar to what was done on 15 Doan, where you create a living fence, a single rail, split rail fence, intermittent boulders combination along that line as a physical barrier for encroachment into the buffer, further into the buffer in the future. We could certainly make recommendations on native plantings. The types of plants that you may have used over on 15 Doan aren't really necessarily the same, because that was abutting a
Volume. Did you have it muted?
salt river.
No, you can go through.
If you could please mute yourself, that would be appreciated. Thank you. But certainly we can make recommendations. I mean, in this area, sweet pepper bush, high bush blueberry, winterberry holly. I could make recommendations in the order of conditions on native plantings that would be applicable for your site. And if that was amenable, I'd recommend approval.
thank you. Just one, if I may, Amy, one thing I'd like to add is the way the property is, that piece of the house that juts out almost right to the 100-foot line. I don't know if I don't think I included the elevations in the plans that I sent, but.
We have elevations.
Okay, so there's a there's a support structure underneath, so it's not, in other words, the foundation doesn't go right up to the 100-foot line, although.
I understand.
We would still need that to be work
Yep.
area. Okay.
Yep.
Because when it's done, it'll be just pillars and,
I can actually see on the plan that you have for the
Thank you.
footings. Yep, thank you.
it's an exciting project because it's a beautiful area. So, thank you.
Anything more, Amy?
No further questions.
Okay, do we have comments from
I don't have anything, it looks pretty straightforward, looks like a pretty good plan.
Jim?
Yeah, just one sort of administrative question. You indicated that you don't presently own the property?
Correct, so, what I did when I built 15 Doan Road, it's such a long story, Mr. Atkinson, but I was gonna buy the building across from the Lanyard, which was owned by the plumbing company, longtime Harwich people. Wolford, thank you, sorry. And in order to get the additional apartment in that building, I had to buy the burned-down house on Doan Road from the Gilbertsons? No.
We know what you mean.
Yeah, so that's how I acquired the properties on that street, and then I subsequently ran into the owner of this property, who now lives in Florida, and he had moved the pipe, but another long story, he had moved there, and it was, he thought a buildable lot, and I said, well, I'll research it for you, and, you know, obviously, I'm not gonna buy it unless I can get a building permit, because otherwise, that's crazy, but, so that's why I don't own it yet. But, the O'Brien family is watching this very closely, and they expect everything, that when it goes through, it'll be vassal property, and then I'll build a structure. But that's gonna happen as soon as I get the building permit.
Okay, my question then is, if we approve your requests this evening, there will be an order of conditions that will be, placed on the property and will have to be recorded at the registry.
Absolutely, and survive the.
It will survive a change, but
It's an RDA.
will the present owners allow that order of conditions to be placed on the property while they own it?
It's not an order of conditions, this is an RDA.
Oh, okay.
So technically, the O'Briens don't have to sign off on this.
Oh, okay. Thank you
Sorry.
for clarifying
Yes,
that.
it's an
Amy.
RDA.
I
Okay.
didn't realize that, but the O'Brien family, they've been wonderful. They're gonna accept anything, only because they know what I'm doing, and they didn't have the they didn't have the ability to do it themselves, so,
Okay, fine. And thank you for the clarification, Amy.
thanks,
I
Amy.
don't want you to worry about that.
That was all I had, John.
Nothing, thank you.
A little more on the living fence, so can we, I guess, we've got recommendations. Can we settle on what that will be, and then?
Yeah,
and then-
actually, because it's not gonna be an order of conditions, I can say that, how would you feel about the language? A living fence composed of, and I would pick a series of native plants that would work well there, or a single rail, split rail fence, but not solely a structural thing.
If it's
and-
possible, I like the plants.
Why don't we just say living fence then,
Yeah.
Paul?
Can we,
And-
and then additionally, can we put in the plans to show that living fence? And then can we condition the RDA that there be no activity on the other side of that fence?
So it is valid for 3 years, so they could, it would be in the files for future commissions to see that this commission said, there shouldn't be further clearing activities there, but it would be up to a future commission.
So
But we can certainly put that condition on there.
an RDA condition wouldn't be standing?
Sorry?
An RDA condition would not be standing moving forward,
It doesn't get recorded, it's
Yeah.
not something that
just
gets.
for 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you or whoever has the property, whenever, if they wanna do future work, they still have to come back to this commission.
Right?
And at that time, we could put it that this is to be a living fence, so that no activities to take place. But
Mhm.
I'd hope the future commission would adhere to that as well.
And if I may add, Amy, the thing with this property is, and again, going back to 15 Doan Road, we were so constrained, we had the minimum 25-foot setback there, so there's really no frontage in that property. This house has 85 feet of frontage.
Yeah.
Everything is in front of the house, Mr. Chase. We're not interested in doing anything in the back other than having a beautiful natural view off of the decks. And there's no need for yard access back there.
Right, but properties change hands.
Oh, I totally
It
agree.
happens
I
all the
totally
time.
agree.
And,
I
and then we,
totally agree.
then we see
So
clearing.
whatever we can do
behind it.
to
Yeah.
solidify that, I'm all in.
Okay. For my own education, Amy, what separated this from an NOI, an RDA to NOI?
There's no structure proposed in the 100.
In the 0 to
Yeah,
100,
there's-
yeah.
For us, that's what we thought.
Yeah. Well, then I guess I'll just ask to have the living fence put into the plans, and then with language saying that, you know, the commission, just give details on what that living fence should be, work with a proponent on the species and that type of
Yep.
thing.
I'm
Thank you.
happy to do that, absolutely.
Paul and Hannah. Hannah, if you could tweak the plan to say that, you know, the limit of work line is to become a living fence upon completion of the project. And I'll get you a list of appropriate plants to choose from.
Got it, we can do that.
Does that delay this hearing today?
No,
Okay.
we haven't voted yet, but.
I'm sorry, yes. I'm just saying, on behalf of the O'Briens, I'm saying, we're not here today.
No, I don't think so.
Is that it, Brad?
Thanks.
Stan?
I just have one last question, though. I'm sorry, I thought I heard that the flowering plants might be different on this property than they were on 15 Doan. Did I hear that right?
Some might be, just because that's more, you do have a little bit of a brackish salt water ecosystem there. It's more, it's sunnier, this is not.
Good point. Okay, no
But
problem. They
we'll give
came
you
out so
some
nice there.
variety. There are a lot of fruiting, flowering plants I think that you will like that I'll send
All
over.
right.
So I have just one question about the plan, and it's really about the elevations. It appears to me that you plan on using fill. There are proposed elevations here to the, what is this? I guess sort of to the north or northwest, I don't know what side. On the upper right side here, toward the back of the house. At 6 feet, and the elevations, they're 2-foot intervals here. It's a little unclear what's happening on this property from the elevations, but it looks like it's somewhat depressed at the back of your building site. I'm just wondering where the end of the actual fill is that you're going to be putting in here. Presumably it goes at least back to where you show a 6-foot proposed elevation, but I'm imagining it's going further back than that.
I
The
think-
elevation is divided by 1 foot, not 2. And the right corner that you're talking about, which is the northern corner of the site, goes down to 9 feet in elevation, and then 10, up to 11. And I believe the highest point on the property is around 13, back where the septic system is. I'm not sure if I can answer your question about fill specifically.
Well, so the two elevations that I can read that are closest to that show, unless I'm reading it upside down, 6 feet and
I'm
8
sorry.
feet. And, or maybe that's 9 feet and 8 feet. Maybe that's my problem. I see.
It's 9, 10, 11.
So there is fill going there at the northern corner of the house, but it's not going much beyond the 9-foot elevation is.
Correct.
Okay. That was my question, thank you. So are there any other questions, comments? Can we have a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 66 Stone Road, map 21, parcel W5-3, with the condition that there shall be no future work beyond the area that is shown on the plan as being disturbed, and that along the back line of the area to be disturbed, there be a living fence composed of native plants.
I'll second that.
Discussion? So, I just have one point, shouldn't you
Sure.
add to that the existing drainage pipe not be disturbed?
I can certainly add that to the motion. So I will add to the motion that the existing drainage pipe shall not be disturbed.
Second.
Okay,
I guess I'm gonna ask one question there, just,
There, Oh,
We're in the
If I
middle of
may.
motions here.
Sorry.
So, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? No opposed. Thank you. Yes,
Just a question. If there's any situation that I cannot foresee, because I don't intend on this, but if I have to raise the access covers to the pipe, the clean out, there's 4 clean outs on that pipe. I don't think, the way the plans are, we do not have to raise those elevations at all, but in any event, if it goes under 6 inches or whatever and I have to raise them up, does that fall into the,
It wouldn't,
not disturbing
anything
the pipe.
outside the 100-foot really wouldn't, but I would hope that you would speak with your engineers and make sure that you're not interrupting flow with whatever
no,
you're
not
doing.
at all. It would just be access, but even
Okay.
that is not gonna happen, so, okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
okay.
I wanna
Thank you,
thank you
everyone.
all, as always. Thank you, Hannah.
Happy to be here.
Thanks again, everyone, as always.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, the next on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for Jack Jacobs, 89 Shore Road, map 5, parcel T1-4 for deck expansion.
Hi, I'm George Avery, I'm the builder. So last year, Jack Jacobs had to fall down the stairs at his property. So we asked for a building permit to do it, which was granted. We fixed everything. His wife is in a wheelchair, and now they're trying to get the existing deck to equal what else has been done. But it requires us to, one part of the deck is a double deck. So it's a deck on top of a deck to make it flush coming out of the, like the master bedroom. Then it goes down a step to the other part of the deck, which we want to raise. They're eliminating the whole thing. They want to raise it up so they can come out flush. But if you look at your plan, there is a section where on the right-hand side, it shows that the deck is not complete to the other side. And we want to make it a square. It's approximately, what did we say, Amy, about 50 square feet? It's about 2'2" by 12 foot that we want to do to bring it out, equal to the other part of the deck. We have eliminated, you'll see there's an angle on the left-hand side. We thought that was gonna be too much of a problem with the conservation hitting the measurements for the side yard. So we're trying to add the decking on the right-hand side to equal it and raise it. And then, Amy had told me about, mitigating plants. I don't know anything about this, but I've had calls into, I believe it's Schumacher. They're a landscape design in Dennis. Plus, Amy said that she would give us recommendations on what we have to do. So,
Okay. Thank you.
So George, I
Yes.
sent you an email a couple days ago with
Yes.
some questions. I didn't know if you had gotten it.
basically, it stated that in the beginning, we thought it was a smaller square footage.
Yep.
Like, I went out the other day, and you're right, it's more than 53 square feet.
Okay. So it was hard to tell based on the plans. We had guessed about 40. If you measured 53, we're gonna go with that.
Yeah, I would go with that.
Okay. So we require, because the site plan that was used was pretty old, we were able to sketch out where we thought the 50-foot, which is our no disturb zone
Correct.
buffer, was. It kind of cuts right through this structure, give or take a foot or two. So, because we don't know exactly if it's 49 feet from the top of bank or 51 feet from the top of bank, well, my recommendation is that You do the 3 times, so when you're within 50 feet of a wetland, you have to do 3 times as much mitigation
Okay,
as you do structure. So 3 times 53 is 159 square feet. I think you had proposed 30, so,
correct, at the,
We need a
at
lot
the
more.
beginning, yeah, just a little difference.
yeah, just a little difference. He did request a variance, and a variance from the 50-foot no disturb. There is room for 160 square feet of mitigation plantings if the owners are amenable to it. Usually what we request is the removal of lawn area and replanting with native plants, and that would be lawn area closest to the top of banking or where they have those boards. If you, on the site, they have these boards that separate the lawn from the natural vegetation.
Yes,
Ideally, we would like to thicken that buffer with some native plantings there.
okay,
And the 50, so as you know, because we've talked, over the year, you, Melissa, and I about this, and it is, doing new structure within the 50-foot buffer can be very challenging.
yes,
So I think where this project has some merit for granting a variance is they have a permitted walkway farther seaward from that goes towards their viewing platform and staircase. And it's really just evening out edges. It's not getting any closer to the resource than existing already is. So I think for a small increase of 53 square feet, if we can get the plantings situated, and like where and what type, then I think it could be, there could be grounds to grant that variance. But with 160 square feet of plantings being needed, it's not that I can say, okay, plant 6 plants. We might need a little bit, something a little bit more, sketched,
Okay.
formalized on a plan.
is that something you would tell me what I needed, and then we would sketch it into the plan? Like the native plantings, whatever, you don't just want me to research them and come
No,
up with
I would make recommendations to you.
Right, exactly, that's what I meant.
But in terms of, I'm not gonna put them on a plan for you.
No, we can,
But I could give you types. And
okay, that would be great.
But let's see what,
Sure.
so with that, I don't know if the commission wants to wait for that plan or if you wanna move on this, but I'll let you guys talk.
Let's see what commissioners have to say. Wayne?
I would be comfortable with letting them go ahead and just bringing in a plan showing the new planting area. I'm sure
Okay.
Amy will be on top of it, so I'm not concerned about it.
I feel the
She
same way.
is.
I feel the same way.
Some days.
Jim?
Okay, I have really 2 questions. One, I think, is for the builder. Is this going to be a complete reconstruction of the entire deck?
Yes, everything's coming off with a new frame.
Okay, so it's a complete reconstruction. Okay, then Mr. Chairman, I also have a question for Amy. Are we basically just 1 foot over into the 50-foot no disturb zone?
It's hard to tell
Approximately?
exactly.
Okay.
It's 1 or 2.
It's 1 or
Literally,
2.
it straddles the line.
Okay, because then my question is that since this is a complete reconstruction, would it be possible to construct it so that it is either on or behind the 50-foot line as
I
opposed
could.
to going into the 50-foot no disturb area?
What they're trying to do is get rid of the jog.
Yeah, no,
So if I
com-
took the jog back, they're not,
Yeah,
They
so
wouldn't
if
know
it
the
just,
difference.
if it's only a foot, it may
Right.
only have to be moved back 1 foot
correct.
to get it completely out of the
Okay,
50-foot no disturb area. Also, I think, that would adjust the amount of mitigation that would be necessary.
correct. Okay.
And then I think we would also like to, or I would like to see the mitigation plan before voting on it.
Okay.
Therefore, it's my desire that we continue this hearing to see if you can address those things.
Okay.
And come back at a future meeting.
Sure.
That's all I have.
So that would take us 24, 37. That takes almost 40 square feet off by going in a foot. So that'll totally be fine. So now we're cutting down on our plantings too.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, something you may want to chat with the homeowner about,
Right.
but that's just a suggestion, so.
Okay?
Yeah, so that's my suggestion, and if you're amenable to that suggestion, my suggestion would be we continue this hearing to a future meeting in order to review those changes.
All right.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mark,
No remarks, thank you.
Brad.
I support Jim's concept. I think it's really good. I do not support variances to the 0 to 50 no disturb zone unless they really fit our bylaws language to the T, and I don't think this one does. So I think it's a great solution right here. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree as well, so.
Okay,
So we should probably then, so we meet in 2 weeks. We would
Okay.
need revisions within a week. I know I could meet with you later this week or early next week.
Yep.
So if you wanna do you want our next meeting is December 21st.
Yes.
Do you want that?
Yes. So, I'll get a new plan made up 11-foot width. And then, I'll find out the plantings and,
Yeah, why don't we make tomorrow, I'll email you and we'll
Okay.
set up an appointment for you to come in, okay?
yes, ma'am, thank you. 2 weeks.
yes, sir.
Isn't this gonna require a new 50-foot delineation?
Yeah.
Because it started off first really with rounding and cutting corners, and then it did grow a little bit because of the situation with and wanting to even everything out. I don't think so. I think it is, so I wouldn't require it, but
Okay.
it is up to the commission if you want to.
Well, I'd rather not put them through it, but I'm just looking for clarity, that's all.
Yeah, I understand.
I agree with your concern, but it's probably, probably a little more than needs to be done, I would think.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree.
So, we seem to have agreement that we're going to continue, so can we have a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we continue the public hearing on the request for determination of applicability for 89 Shore Road, map 5, parcel P1-4.
December
Second.
21st.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy, to our meeting of December 21st, 1922, or 2022. I'll get it right eventually.
We got hours to go here, Jim.
I know, it's going to be a long night.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, we'll chat with you soon.
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a request for change in plan for 52, well, there are actually, is it 3 requests for change in plan here?
No, they're a little different. We can take them.
Take them one at a time. Okay.
Well,
Starting-
do you want to take, Stephanie, would it make sense to do the change in plan and the amendment simultaneously since they're
Yes.
interconnected?
Yes.
Would you announce the first 2?
Okay, so the 2 items we're going to address now are request for change in plan for 52 North Road, map 19, parcel S1, RDA 2019-7 for septic system installation, and for 47 North Road, map 9, amended order of conditions for 47 North Road, map 19, parcel SE 32-2373 for a septic system installation.
Hi, good evening. Stephanie Sequin with Ryder and Wilcox. I'm representing Tom Smith, who is the owner of the 2 properties at 47 and 52 North Road. Number 47 is a property with a one-bedroom cottage located adjacent to the Herring River, and number 52 North Road is directly across the street and has an existing two-bedroom dwelling. Both properties are located within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The 100-year flood elevation is between 11 and 12 feet above mean sea level. We also have salt marsh and bordering vegetated wetland that impact these properties. Back in May of 2019, the commission issued an order of conditions to for number 47 to replace the existing cesspool with a 1,000-gallon tight tank, and at the same time issued a negative determination of applicability for septic upgrade at 52 North Road. Those were both issued in 2019. As far as I can tell, they're both still valid until August of 2023. Shortly after that, Mr. Smith purchased the properties, and what is being proposed now, he's done some investigation into some alternatives. Basically, rather than putting the 1,000-gallon tight tank on number 47 in such close proximity to the river and the marsh, we'd like to replace instead of putting in the 1,000-gallon tight tank, install a sewage ejector at number 47, pump the sewage under North Road to an expanded leaching system on number 52. So rather than having a two-bedroom system on number 52, we're having a slightly larger system, adequate for a total of 3 bedrooms. So that's why we're requesting an amended order for number 47 to install a sewage ejector and a force main in lieu of the tight tank. And then we're requesting a revised plan be approved for number 52 under the existing negative determination of applicability to expand from the 2-bedroom leaching system to the 3-bedroom. And with this expanded leaching system, we expanded toward the abutters property line, so we're not getting any closer to the resource area. It's expanding away from the resource area, so not getting any closer. So I think that's it. You may recall we were here in July of this year with these same requests, and as you know, no action was made. But at that meeting, I had submitted a plan that included additional work on number 52, replacing the paved driveway with a slightly larger circular drive. I've removed that part from the plan that is now before you, so that's not part of this request at this time. So that's all I have to say on these two applications. Mr. Smith is attending remotely, so he's here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Okay, so first for the change in plan for 52 North, this was an RDA, so it couldn't be like an amendment like 47 is. So it's coming in front of you as a change in plan to go from a 2 to a 3-bedroom septic system in approximately, the same location, slightly expanded landward because of the larger size. So it'll be more of a conversation, I think, with the Board of Health, but they have to come to conservation, being riverfront area and buffer zone and flood zone, I think, still on 52. Currently, there are still cesspools on both these properties. So a compliant Title V system, even though the water is not currently on, a Title V system will be much better than the cesspools that are there now. The reason we didn't move forward, one of the reasons we didn't move forward in the summer was so Mr. Smith could make more of a good faith effort on getting into compliance with some of the other issues on the property, which I've reported to you in executive session, and we won't go into detail here tonight, but there's been a lot of efforts made, which is a wonderful thing. So I think now would be the appropriate time to have these in front of us. So that's for 52, is to go from a 2 to a 3-bedroom system. 47 North Road, a couple of years ago, you approved to go from a cesspool to a tight tank. I believe the Board of Health had put a seasonal use restriction on that of 6 months. Now you're asking, instead of doing the tight tank, to do a ejector pump to pump the 1 bedroom's worth of effluent over to 52. It is farther away from the wetland. If the tight tank ever were to have an issue, that's certainly concerning, right near the wetland. I do think that there will be more discussion with the Board of Health. But I would recommend approval of the change in plan for 52 North and the amendment for 47 North at this time.
Okay, thank you. Wayne?
The 2 existing cesspools have to be removed, not just pumped and filled. They take out all the blocks and all the sediment in the bottom.
Okay.
You got 2 of them. You got one right there by the river, and you got another one on the other house. You know. And also, I'm just curious, how does that work when you drill under a town road? Do you have to get permission from the highway department or anything?
Yes.
Yeah. I was
They
just
had
curious.
to,
I've never
yeah.
seen that done before, but,
Yeah, they go to DPW.
okay. But anyway, the big thing for me is the septic.
To remove the
cesspools.
Removal.
Dig them all out, get all the
Okay.
sludge out, and fill it back in with clean sand. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Al?
My question was the same thing about access to easement. You have to have an easement, or is it just a simple permit from the highway department? I'm not sure.
I
town
don't know, Mr. Smith has dealt with the highway superintendent, so I don't know if there was an actual permit. Or if it was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I got.
There certainly will be documents required to have a shared system, and that's sort of built into Title V, has, you know, sort of cross easement requirements, and I'm sure that will be part of the Board of Health record keeping.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have one question for Amy and one question for the applicant. Amy, you mentioned that the applicant is making good progress on the issues that we had raised prior. Is there, while you may not want to discuss all the details, are you optimistic that the issues that we had raised in the past will be resolved in the foreseeable future?
Yep, in my opinion, the issues at 52 have been resolved, and you will very shortly this evening be hearing about the two outstanding issues relating to the bulkhead and the deck, because it all ties into their request for the next hearing to repair the bulkhead. So there are, in my opinion, 5 out of the 7 things have been fixed at 47, with 2 remaining that will hopefully take place very quickly, if the bulkhead repair is granted.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. I'm happy to hear that there's been progress on those issues. Now, my question for the applicant is, as Wayne had raised the issue of getting the permission to sort of pipe under North Road, if we grant what is requested here tonight and you don't get that permission, what then happens?
And Tom, can you answer this? I think you already have the permission?
If you have the
Yes, I
permission,
do.
that answers the question
I spoke
completely.
with the
Town of Harwich Road Department, and they granted me permission to do that. And that is secure with them to date. Okay, so are they granting you an easement to pipe that under the road? No, they're not granting me an easement, they're granting me the authority to do it, and if there's any problems related to it, that I will fix it. And
Okay.
I said I had no problem with that, I'd be happy to do it, and that's what I did. Is that going to be in some form of document or a letter or something that you're getting from the highway department? I'm assuming it's already documented, and I could get that from the head of the department, but I believe it's already documented and set, and he agreed to it. That was some year ago, year and a half ago. Oh, okay, that's fine. So if it is documented, if we, if the commission, through Amy could just get a copy of that documentation for the file? Yeah, absolutely. I will contact him as soon as possible and get back to Amy with that. Great, thank you very much. That's all I have.
All things being equal, given the location of the cottage at 47, to me, the tight tank is a better option. That way, every ounce of effluent that's available can be removed from site. And if it's limited to a seasonal access, that just ensures the volume being diminished, which is clearly an issue in the area. That's really about all I got to say about that, but I can't say that I support the force main crossing the street and tying the two together. So.
Thank you, Brad.
I guess all I have to say is I understand Mark's concern, but is that a conservation question between the two, or is that more public health?
Well, I went back and forth about this, because if we had, 3 years ago, had we seen, when we saw this originally, to go from a cesspool to what was proposed as a Title V at 52 and a tight tank at 47. If we had been proposed, what we're being proposed now, then, I think we would have approved it as an improvement. So the way I struggled with it, because I too agree that seasonal use and a tight tank, further limits, you're going from what could be 3 bedrooms of effluent to 2, but it's an improvement over existing, and I didn't see a place in the act or the bylaw that would say that we have to go with the other alternative, or that it would be grounds for the denial, put it that way. I didn't see a way for us to deny it for 47.
Does Board of Health have to
Yes,
approve
sorry.
before we granted approval?
No, we go first. Typically, that's the way it goes. They have more stringent regulations.
And that's my point. This isn't a typical case. So, I mean, to my mind, the method that they approve could well impact our decision.
And if they don't approve, like say if we approve this and they don't, then whatever has to get done, unless it's exactly what you've originally gotten permission for, which you have an active approval for, if anything changes, it has to come back to us.
Nothing further.
Stan? So, I have a concern related to Mark's and others. My concern is, particularly since Mr. Smith has, what we have now is verbal assurance of approval from the Highway Department. My concern is about how robust a line going from 47 under the street into 52 is. And I don't know whether there are engineering standards for this, whether the Highway Department has engineering standards for how you run a sewage line, but it's a particularly critical issue at this location. If there were ever a break, somebody drives a 20-ton truck over this, and you designed it for, 4-ton pickups or whatever, there's a problem, those pipes can crack. So I would like some assurance that this is a solid, robust solution. And I don't think verbal assurances, particularly given our experience so far with this site, are at all adequate. So I'm not, and looking at the sewage ejector detail, that's on this plan, it shows an elevated line going, above grade out from the sewage ejector thing, which clearly that's not gonna happen here. So I don't think there are enough design details here.
Maybe Stephanie can address some of your concerns.
Yeah, I can, you make a good point now that I look at that sewage ejector detail. Yeah, that's a typical detail that we took from, say, something going in your basement. So that was my error. It obviously will not be going above ground. It will stay below grade. It's going to be well below the surface of the road, so I don't think the vehicular traffic would have much of any impact on the stability of the force main. If we could provide you with the approval that the DPW department or the highway department has issued, would that satisfy your concerns?
Mr. Chairman, if I would, Attorney Christopher Alphen, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, Silverstein, just a comment about the road. I'm not positive whether North Road is a public or private way. If it's a private way, then my client could do whatever he wants as far as utilities go. If it is a public way, then of course he needs approval from the town. I'm not sure the process for Harwich, but oftentimes it may require a selectman's vote. Obviously, any sort of approval will be conditioned upon my client, Mr. Smith, getting approval from the town to install any utilities. And those utilities that get installed on a public way gets reviewed by the highway department, and of course they have to meet certain engineering standards before any utilities are installed on a public way.
And it is a public road.
It is.
It's not private.
Yeah, and I thought your client said that they already received the approval.
Yes.
Okay,
So we're-
but the attorney is saying that it will have to go for approval. So I'm confused.
I'm not sure whether my client has gotten approval or not. He says he has. But in any event, if he hadn't, he's still required to get such approval. So
Okay, well,
any sort of decision, any decision by this board is obviously going to be conditioned upon him getting approval. And, I'm seconding Amy's comments that she made before, is that what's before the Conservation Commission is obviously the applications before you. And any conditions that Mr. Smith needs, whether it be Board of Health or with the DBW, are obviously conditions on the project being completed.
okay, I guess I'm still confused. I'm hearing different things from your client and from your client's attorney, and that has me concerned.
So,
Okay, this is Tom, and if I could interject, I have approval from the town to do what I want to do going under the road by the DPW chairman, whatever you call him. He gave me permission. I signed the papers. He signed the papers to allow me to do it and said, if there's any problems in the future, you are responsible for it. And I said, I totally understand. And that's where I came to my conclusion as to this was okay to do.
Yeah, I think we'll just like a copy of that, that's all.
well, I'd like.
Yeah,
to-
that's not a problem.
Excuse me, I'd like
I'm
to
sure
go
if
to-
I called him tomorrow, he would be happy to introduce that to you.
So, there's 2 points here. One is, a written copy of whatever documentation the Highway Department has of approving this thing, and the other part is a stamped engineering plan that includes the detail of how the pipe is being run under the road and connected into the septic system across the street. I think those two things, you know, you have a detailed stamped engineering plan, that would cover my concerns.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally understand. That's completely acceptable to me.
Okay, so, sounds to me like we can't really
Sounds like we're gonna
act on
continue
this.
these two.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree, Mr. Chairman. I think I would like to see those also and review those before we take a vote on this. So my recommendation would be that we continue this.
When would be an appropriate date to continue to?
Yeah, if I could interject, why are we continuing? If I provide the information that the DPW has approved it, why are we continuing this?
Because we don't have any of that information right now. We don't have a stamped engineering plan. We don't have any of that detail, stamped or not, in the existing engineering plans. So we need to see that.
Well, I'll be happy to provide it, but if I provide it, why should we continue this to another meeting?
Okay, well, I will say if someone on the Conservation Commission wants to make a motion to the effect that we're approving it now, we can vote on that motion. So I invite a motion from anybody on the commission. Would you like to approve this plan conditioned on getting those two missing items? Hearing nothing, we don't have the commission willing to act at this point, so I would like a motion to continue, and let's, before we get a motion, talk about a date.
The next available date is December 21st. We would need information by the 14th. Is that amenable?
It's fine with me.
Okay.
John,
yeah.
Stan has a question.
Yes, I'm
Well,
sorry,
I'd
Stan.
question that you're gonna be able to get a stamped engineering plan between now and the 14th.
If we're not able to, we'll request it be continued
Okay.
to whatever the next available
I'm just questioning,
meeting is.
because having been through it with wastewater and everything else, just in residential things, it takes a while, but whatever.
So we could do one motion for both of the topics, the change in plan for 52 North and the amendment for 47.
Okay. I'll move that we continue the public hearing on the request for a change in plan for 52 North Road, map 19, parcel S1, RDA 2019-7, and continue the hearing for the amendment of the order of conditions for 47 North Road, map 19, parcel S2, SE 32-2373. Both of these issues continue to our meeting of December 21st, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unopposed, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have, let's see. So next is a request for an amended order of conditions for 47 North Road, map 19, parcel S2, SE 32-2428 for bulkhead repair.
Good evening, Stephanie Sequin again with Ryder and Wilcox representing Tom Smith. And this is a request for an amended order of conditions at 47 North Road. Mr. Smith is here, as well as Lars Jensen, who is his structural engineer. So we're requesting an amended order of conditions to allow repairs to the existing bulkhead at 47 North Road. In November of 2020, you issued an order of conditions to allow repairs to the existing bulkhead at 47 North Road. That order allowed for the installation of vinyl sheet piling on the inside of the existing timber bulkhead to help stabilize the timber bulkhead was deteriorating, so this was the solution to replacing that or shoring it up. That work was completed, but the bulkhead is now showing signs of instability. So Mr. Jensen has come up with a proposal to install helical piles as deadmen, a total of 6 to be installed through the existing timber posts, through the vinyl sheathing behind it, and into the soil between the bulkhead and the existing building. He's provided details on how that will be accomplished, including a construction protocol of how they will install the piles. I believe he is online and available to, if he wants to elaborate and go into greater detail as to how that exactly will be done. So if you, I don't know, Lars, if you wanted to jump in, or if any of the commissioners have questions.
Amy, I think you, I don't know if you can hear me, but I think you described that well, especially the sequencing list on the last sheet of our submittal, and I'd be happy to answer any questions of the commissioners.
Okay, Amy.
So Lars, when we met on site, you were also talking about having to install whalers. I'm just seeing helical tieback piles at this point. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. You know, in order to bring in more economy, we were able to take the whalers out and basically go directly to the existing timber pile face. You know, obviously there's less components, so it's less expensive to install, and it's also longer lasting, right? Because the whaler would be one of the first things, typically a hot dip galvanized steel whaler in such an exposed location tends to deteriorate quicker. So this is it's just a different design from what we thought we would have to do initially, and we're anchoring or tying the piles back directly with this approach.
Thank you. I had asked after we got the original set of plans for Mr. Jensen to revise to show what was the original plan was a little bit unclear about what was existing versus what was proposed, so they've revised it to show really only the new proposed things are 6 helical tieback piles. Going back, if you go to the site, and I took the commissioners there a little while ago, we did see that, you know, the piles on the south side of the structure in particular are starting to bend outwards. There's a gap in the deck now where you can, over an inch, where you can see everything's pulling away. So I think there's definitely a need for this. I'm curious about time frame, because this does, well, there were 2 outstanding issues still at 47 that need to come into compliance. One is the size of the decking, and Mr. Smith also has to address the wide bulkhead cap that is along the top of the wall there. So when we met out on site, I think myself, Stephanie, Mr. Jensen, Mr. Smith, you said, you know, at this time, when you do this work, it would make sense to do the other work too and come back into compliance. The commission's always said, you know, it remains in non-compliance until it gets fixed, whether it's fixed with this project or before. Do you have a time frame, Mr. Smith and Mr. Jensen, for when you hope to do this work?
Well, for me, Amy, it's as soon as possible. Obviously, it depends on who you hire and when they can get to it. As far as Lars is concerned, I think he just wants to have it happen as soon as possible. I can't answer for him, but go ahead, Lars.
I guess it's more of a question for Tom, since you are, you know, the owner and will be doing the hiring and whatnot, but.
Right.
So-
I have a few contractors in mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can get them to do the job as soon as you'd like them to do. But
Yep.
I definitely have, for me, it's the sooner the better in all of this situation.
Lars, can you verbally just tell the commission, I know it's in writing, but a little bit about the construction protocol, what's needed for putting these in, what's your access, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So the last page, if you want to follow along, gives a brief outline of what this construction sequencing would look like. Because the piles cannot be driven directly from the exterior side, from the water side, you know, the existing deck would have to be at least partially, if not fully, in the area where the piles are installed, be removed. Then it's being excavated. The lead sections, you know, the parts of the piles that have the discs on it that provide the hold, are being put into those holds and then driven from the land side. There's typically two ways that could be done, either via a mini excavator on the land side or with a handheld hydraulic torque system. And once they have been advanced to its final position, the hole is drilled through the existing timber piles, and then the two ends are connected, so to speak. And then that's the same for every pile location. Then once the piles are connected to the timber piles, the new system is completed, if you will, and everything is being backfilled, and the deck can be reestablished on top of it. That's the rough construction process.
Thank you. I don't think I have any more questions at this time. Want to see getting into compliance expedited as possible. So I would recommend approval of the amendment.
Okay, so do we have comments from the commissioners?
I'm in agreement also to go ahead and do this and fix it. I've worked on a number of these bulkhead jobs, and it looks like they've got it under control, at least by plan. Yeah.
No comment.
No comment.
Mark?
Nothing further to add.
Same here.
Dan?
I'm concerned, in terms, doesn't sound like even though there's some contractors being considered, nobody's been contacted, and all I've heard was, well, we'd like to do it as soon as possible. That doesn't sit well with me. I think there should be more.
Well, those two items still remain in non-compliance.
Right.
And will remain in non-compliance
Right.
until they're addressed, so. That is something we're going through the legal process
Right.
with currently.
No, I'm just saying, I just don't like what I hear, that they haven't even approached any contractors yet to even see if the work can be done and maybe how soon, even though they haven't maybe contracted with one, but to have some idea of the availability. That's all I have to say.
Well, if I could interject now, the applicability of a contractor depends on whether we can do the job. So if you can tell me I can do the job, then I can hire a contractor. Nobody even wants to talk to me until I have a plan that I can be approved by you. So I'm happy to do whatever you want me to do, but I have to have your approval first.
And can I just add, I mean, the fact that this bulkhead that's protecting his property, and seeing it pulling away and separating the deck boards that's the motivation for him to get this done as soon
No,
as
I understand,
possible.
but the track record of this applicant isn't too good, in my opinion, so, of getting things done, so that's my concern.
Okay, is that what you have, Stan?
Yep.
I have a couple of questions. One is that I thought I heard Mr. Jensen say he was taking whalers out of the plan. Maybe I misheard him. But there are, in the plan here, there are timber whalers, which it says they will remain, so.
Those are the old whalers, I believe, from the original bulkhead.
It says existing
That's
whaler
correct,
timber.
The whalers that you see there are existing, and they would remain. There was a discussion with Amy on site when we all met that a new potential system would include new whalers outbound of the existing timber piles. And we were able to provide a system where those are not needed. New whalers wouldn't be needed, but the existing construction and the whalers that are shown in the section which are there would remain in place.
I see. Okay, thank you. So my other question, which in my mind is related, is that one of the issues with this job originally was that the size of the deck was expanded. And I believe that that is related to the method of construction. So my question is, when this work is done, is that issue going to be addressed as part of the work? Returning the design to the dimensions that were approved originally by the Conservation Commission?
It's something I've always brought up to the applicant, when we've seen that the deck needs to go back to its original configuration.
Right, and for me, what we're doing right now is tying in the piles to keep them from falling in one place or another. And that's where we'd like to keep it. We would like to keep it from falling into the river and causing further damage to the river.
So are you telling me that if we approve this plan as it is, we're going to be memorializing one of the original violations, which was you expanding the size of the deck?
Well, yes, if that means 1.5 inches over the actual piles, yes, because that's holding everything together to keep it from falling into the river.
I don't think anybody's arguing about 1.5 inches. I think that wasn't the problem.
Well, that's exactly what the dimensions are. They're 1.5 inches in. They're from one side of the pile to the other. That's what the dimensions are.
I think the deck we're talking about here, Tom, is the deck that's actually physically connected to your house. The deck.
Are you talking about the one to the left-hand side of the window, Amy?
Talking about where you put your table and the
Yeah,
deck.
yeah, yeah. With that, as I told you, I'm happy to remove whatever that amount is. I don't know what it is. It's 2 feet or 3 feet or whatever it is.
It's more than
I'm-
that.
I'm happy
and
to-
We've talked about it numerous times, and I know Stephanie has the original plan, so we can find out exactly how much it is.
Yep, I totally agree with you on that, Amy. I have no problem with that, and that will be done when we deal with the overall issue. Right now, all my concern is just to keep this thing from falling into the river as well as my house. That's my only concern.
So to answer the chairman's question, approval will allow Mr. Smith to put the deck into compliance.
But again, we don't have any documentation of what the applicant's plans are in that respect, and you're asking us to proceed with no documentation of what the plans. These are very microscopic plans here, and they're not showing the overall thing, so I'm not sure how to proceed here. Certainly, any other changes that Mr. Smith makes to any of this needs to come before the Conservation Commission. And if doing this work on the pilings as it's being proposed results in an enlargement of the deck in that area, then the deck will have to be shrunk below its original. In my opinion, the deck would have to be shrunk back so that the total area is not more than it was before any of this work started. Do you agree with that, Amy? I mean, I don't know.
The original enforcement was that the decking all has to, the footprint of the deck. The two things are the deck that where like the table is, and then the other part that's not in compliance was what you call as the bulkhead cap, which we consider more decking, is to put those things into compliance. And this is more of, we can't get too far into it because it is in litigation, but I think it is very easy to calculate the size of the deck that's there now versus what has been on existing plans in the past. And that at the time that this work is done, it needs to come back into compliance, if not sooner.
Yes.
Which is fine with me, Amy. I have no
Just a
problem with that.
moment, please.
The only thing I want to do is tie in the piles to keep them from falling into the river. That's all I wanted to do from day one. And that's my objective, is just to keep my house from falling into a river.
Jim?
Okay, so then is it my understanding, Amy, that this proposal will not bring the deck completely back into compliance?
This proposal is purely for the helicals. That is an opportune time to bring the deck back into compliance
But this
because you have to
proposal
remove.
does not bring it back into compliance, correct?
This proposal, let me look at the plan.
This proposal includes the removal of at least some of the existing decking, which is going to be required in order to install the tiebacks.
But the question is, does it bring it back into compliance?
Well, it actually
If you want
has,
to make that a condition,
and actually, I think, so the plan that Mr. Jensen and Stephanie have proposed, I believe, show the deck where it should be, not where it is now. The deck where it is now extends farther north than this plan shows. By approving this plan, you approve the original configuration of the deck. I would recommend.
You're talking about this low
Well,
resolution.
I have a bigger one.
so this plan was prepared using the Title V plan
Correct.
that we prepared.
Mm-hmm.
The dimensions of the deck on that plan are based on our field notes from 2006, from when the bulkhead was, I think there was approval to repair the
Yep.
south side of the bulkhead.
Mm-hmm.
So I know as of 2006, the dimensions of the deck that are shown on this plan. The Title V plan was prepared in 2019. I can't honestly say what the dimensions of the deck were in 2019. We didn't, at that time, our focus was on the septic system, which was on the roadside of the building, and we didn't compare or verify what the dimensions of the deck were at that time, if it had been rebuilt over the years. So I can't honestly say what the dimensions of the deck were in 2019. I do have the dimensions as of 2006, which are smaller than what exists there now, as everyone is aware.
So would it be reasonable or make sense to approve this plan with the condition that the resulting structure remain within the footprint of the 2006 deck?
Yes.
Okay. Stan?
No, and I agree with you, but and based on what you're saying, that's what it's showing. I think what's confusing is in the plan, it talks just about repairing the bulkhead and and doesn't say changing the deck.
Right. Well, the purpose really was for the helical, but the site plan does show, this is part of the record too.
Right.
So they have to comply with this.
Okay, so perhaps we could have a motion to that effect.
Okay, let me try, Jeff. Okay. I'll move that we approve the request for an amendment to the order of conditions for 47 North Road, map 19, parcel S2, SE 32-2428 for bulkhead repair under the condition that the resulting structure of the deck be of the dimensions of the deck in 2006.
Okay, anybody want a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
I would just say rather than 2000, or is this defined, you say that that's what the plan is saying, Sean? The dimensions, the correct dimensions in the plan.
As of 2006.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. All right,
Done. Thank you very much.
So we will do the orders 2 weeks from now, and the permit will be out shortly thereafter.
Thank you.
so, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is application with a notice of intent for 61 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-1, to raise and replace the dwelling with appurtenances and beach access.
They would like a continuation actually till January 4th, not 12/21. They would like January 4th. We had coastal processing specialist Greg Berman out to the site this week, and he needs a little more time to complete his report. There was some discussion between myself, the applicant's engineer, and Greg about where the appropriate landward edge of dune line should be for this one, so. Before it got to you, we wanted to all be in agreement. So, they would like a continuance to January 4th, 2023.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll move that we continue the hearing on the notice of intent for 61 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-1, to our meeting of January 4th, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Passes. Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent for 23 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-10, for a detached garage. Evening.
Good evening. Russ Holden from Ryder and Wilcox.
Thanks, Russ.
Phil Cheney, the landscape designer. And joining us remotely is Paul Ayub, one of the applicants. As noted, the project consists of the construction of a 14-foot by 22-foot detached garage at 23 Soundview Road. The site plan before you shows the property lines of lots 9A, 9B, 10A, and 10B as approved for endorsement by the Planning Board on November 23rd, 2022. Lot 9B becomes part of Lot 10A. Lot 10B becomes part of 9A. The reason I tell you all this is that the A&R plan, approval not required plan, was created to allow construction of the garage so that it conforms to the building setback requirements. The project also consists of the removal of the existing paved driveway and existing brick walk. Proposed is the construction of a new gravel drive and paver walk. A limit of work fabric silt fence will be located and staked prior to construction. All demolition material will be loaded into trucks and removed from the site. Throughout construction, all debris shall be placed in dumpsters or other suitable containers. The site will be cleaned on a daily basis. The lot is subject to a coastal bank and riverfront boundary. Regarding the coastal bank, the proposed garage is 61 feet from the top of bank with no work proposed within the 0 to 50-foot buffers. The increase in coverage within the 50-foot to 100-foot buffer is 364 square feet. As shown on the landscape plan prepared by Phil, there is proposed mitigation plantings of 747 square feet. Within the riverfront boundary, there is proposed an increase of coverage of 589 square feet, or 2.7% of the riverfront area. The total mitigation proposed within this area is 1,178 square feet. This is at a ratio of 2-to-1 mitigation to coverage. Proposed work within the riverfront area is redevelopment of a previously developed area. The work will not impair the capacity of the riverfront area to provide wildlife habitat functions, nor will it impair groundwater or surface water quality by incorporating erosion or sedimentation controls that reduce non-point source pollution. I'm done.
Thank you.
Phil Cheney, the landscape designer. I'll just quickly outline the mitigation. You see the plantings proposed. We're trying to create, per se, build up the buffer as much as we can on top of the steep coastal bank behind the existing yew hedge. So we're increasing it from a minimum of 6 feet and in some places up to 12 or 13 feet. In addition, there's another spot within the 50-foot zone, which is currently lawn area, which is the smaller 431 square foot area, which we're replacing with all kinds of native shrubs and trees in there. 3 trees are being removed for the sake of the driveway. Only 2 are within the 100-foot. 1 is within the 200-foot riverfront only. But nonetheless, we're replacing with 3 new native trees to go in the property when we're done. So I think overall, we're definitely improving the buffer zone to the coastal bank.
Thank you. Amy?
Okay, so I'll keep it quick, but they are proposing double the amount of mitigations to proposed work. The proposed work is landward of the existing house, in the proposal of the garage and the pervious driveway. I think this project will result in a net improvement of the area. I would say the majority of the mitigation is conversion of lawn to appropriate native plantings. A small portion of it is removal of 8 ornamental yews and conversion of that area to native plants as well. Again, the proposal is farther away from the resource than the house, in an existing disturbed area for the most part. And you're getting some lawn reduction, definitely some better diversity of plantings, better habitat, and better buffer to the river. So I would recommend approval, and it meets Rivers Act standards, as my reading of the Mass Rivers Act.
No comment, John.
No comment.
No comment?
No remarks, thank you.
Fran.
Just want to say, very good site plan showing existing proposed conditions. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm all set.
I have no comments. Any comments from anyone else? Can I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 23 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-10.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I said we deserve a gold
That
star.
was easy, right? Well, if you want to stay,
More entertainment in store.
there is more.
Definitely.
So next on the agenda is 14 Mill Point Road. It's a request, a notice of intent for 14 Mill Point Road, map 1, parcel J1-94. It's been a request for a continuance to December 21st, 2022.
We've changed that one too, because they have to go to Waterways on the 21st.
Oh, so it's,
It's going to be the 4th of January.
okay. Can I have a motion to that effect?
Sure. I'll move that we continue the public hearing on the notice of intent for 14 Mill Point Road, map 1, parcel J1-94, to our meeting of January 4th, 2023.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Okay, so next on the agenda is a request for an extension for maintenance dredging at Oyster Creek Preservation Elm Harbor Inlet, maps 5 and 6, SE 32-2280.
Good evening, Arlene Wilson, AM Wilson Associates here for Oyster Creek. This request was continued so that we could provide the commission with one of what is going to be a series of surveys of the edge of the marsh in the places where the channel for the dredging was less than 30 feet from that marsh. We've done that. I think you all have those plans. And so we would request tonight that you approve the continuance with the conditions that I think Amy is going to stipulate for dates for 2 more follow-up surveys.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Real quick, Arlene, when did the dredging that was permitted here actually take place? What year? 2019?
Yeah, I thought it was 18 actually, but.
A few years ago.
Yes, 2 years ago.
Okay. And the follow-up survey was done fairly recently?
Yes,
Right.
it was done in November, which interestingly is just a year, 2 years subsequent to the post-dredge survey. So the post-dredge survey was done in November.
Yeah.
And this one was also done in
Yeah.
November.
So, what your survey noted of the marsh was there was some change to the marsh. If it was correlated exactly to the dredging, it's hard to tell. Marsh edges can change sometimes. You had about 90 square feet of marsh on one side, and then growth of 225 square feet of marsh on the other side. The loss was on the south, the growth was on the north side of the creek. So, the commission had conditioned, that you do additional post-dredge surveys depicting marsh edge. I would recommend a 3-year extension, but that we get 2 more additional post-dredge surveys of marsh edge by October 1st, 2023 and October 1st, 2024.
Okay, thank you.
And we're happy to do that.
Comments from the commissioners? Wayne,
I have nothing, no.
Alan, Jim?
No comment.
Mark,
Nothing.
Brad?
Yeah, I guess I need a little clarification on what will be extended. Will there be additional dredging conducted, or is it just to do the surveys?
The extension is in case we need to do more dredging, in which case we would have to come back to you for coordination in any event. We would need to do more work with 401, but as I think many of the commission members, and I know Amy is aware, the permitting for dredging projects is so extensive, it takes so long that whatever permits we can keep alive are beneficial to us.
So it's a two-year extension?
It's they're requesting a full 3-year extension. You could also condition that these be dredged, if additional dredging were to occur, that we still need a post-dredge survey within 30 days. We obviously need these 1-year after surveys. And if they do an additional dredging, the commission could extend another year or two the requirement for these monitoring surveys.
What's the anticipation? Does it need dredging?
It was 8 years between the dredging. Yeah, so, except for the fact that there is some additional work going on in the channel, as I think you are well aware, we would not anticipate that we would need to dredge very quickly again. But it's an expensive operation and it's a long-term process.
So they're just trying to keep it active, so they don't start from scratch again.
Has it had an extension before?
No.
Yes, we have.
Did you?
Yes. Which surprised me too when I looked at it.
Oh, you did, yes.
Yeah.
This started in 2016, but you didn't actually do the work until 2018, 2019. Yeah.
Right.
You could
Does
start.
the order of condition match the chapter 91 period? It's the same, it's the same.
Oh, does
period.
it match the period?
Yeah. When would you have to go back to renew that?
We have to go back to 401 and 4 predominantly. We can, in fact, get an extension on the Chapter 91, which I believe we will be seeking. But right now, the Chapter 91 process is a little at 6s and 7s because they've changed all of the application forms. And although you wouldn't think that changing the application form would change the actual process, there have been some things that have snuck in to those forms. In fact, we had a question on one of them that pertains to extending a license, where the form now says, if you do it too soon, you forfeit all the time that's left on the original permit, even though there was no regulatory change to authorize that. So that's gone back to the department's legal team to review. There are a bunch of things like that are going on.
Penalize you.
Yeah.
Yep.
An ugly process.
Right, so I guess my concern isn't so much to do with this particular footprint, it's the process of extensions, and
Yeah.
we've talked before about limiting the number of extensions that we will grant, but right now I think we have no such limitation. Is that correct, Amy?
We don't.
Yeah.
Um,
So this would bring it, the 3 years would bring this close to a 10-year process, is that about
It would
right?
bring it to 9 years.
Yeah, 9 years.
I mean,
You don't have to, I mean, I would recommend this extension,
And I agree.
but we
Yeah.
could talk about, not extending ad infinitum,
Right, and who knows who'll be sitting here in 3 years, but
Right.
that'd be my concern, is to have a process that might just keep getting extended 3 years when conditions change.
Yeah.
And so if I could just let the record show that, that I would like to see this process, after this extension, have discussion on resubmitting notice of intent, just to get it in the record. And then also for all the commissioners, we have talked about this quite a bit. What do people feel about this unlimited extension that we have, and do we want a bylaw change to address that? So I just wanted to make that point.
Just to clarify, so when was the original permit? What year?
2016.
2016? Okay. And so how many times, so they dredged twice or just once during this time?
Once.
Okay, so if we go this, oh, wait a minute, that's not gonna add up to 10 years. If we're
Nine.
gonna be to 2024.
25.
25,
Okay.
9 years.
So even if they do dredge, it'll only be a second time during that 10-year period. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, we're not talking about really frequent dredges here.
No,
so.
I just wanted to understand what's actually been done.
I mean, there is a recognition in the Wetlands Protection Act that dredging is something that you want to look at long-term. And there is an allowance that the commission can actually grant a dredging permit for 5 years. No, I don't know of a single commission that I've ever worked before that does that, but the allowance is there, so somebody recognized the problem.
I came across one when I was doing research. We have one permit, dredge permit, and I think it's expired now, but it was a 5-year permit.
I wouldn't object to that, a 5-year permit with a 5-year extension.
Yeah.
Then
And then you come back.
allow the new commission to, see what's happened. We'll put a placeholder on that one.
Yeah.
You all set? Any other comments? Someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the extension for Oyster Creek Preservation, Allen's Harbor Inlet, map 5 and 6, SE 32-2280, for a 3-year extension with under the condition that additional post-dredge surveys depicting the edge of marsh be done for the next 2 years, or by October 1st, 2023, and October 1st, 2024 respectively. And if there's any additional dredging that needs to be done, that the commission be provided with additional post-dredge surveys.
We have a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now,
Getting there.
I guess so. Next thing on the agenda is order of conditions for 28 Wawatasi Road, map 6, parcel F1-12, SE 32-2431.
If you have any questions on the conditions, let me know. I know Mark Burgess is also available remotely if you have any last-minute questions of him.
Nope.
No questions? Okay, I'll move that we close the public hearing and issue an order of conditions for 28 Wawatesi Road, map 6, parcel F1-12, SE 32-2431.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed? Passes. Okay, so now we have a list of how many? 9 or something. Requested certificates of compliance, starting with 5 Salt River Lane, map 4, parcel A1-B3, SE 32-2328 for shorefront protection.
So, this came originally in front of you a couple of months ago, but we tabled it because we didn't have an as-built site plan that showed the benchmarks in the wall per the order of conditions, nor had we received monitoring reports. The project was permitted in 2018 and the work done between 2019 and 2020. The plantings have been done, the wall is in, the benchmarks are in. They have now submitted a site plan with benchmarks, 2 benchmarks. Let's see. So I did my inspection in late September this year when things still had leaves. Plantings did look good, and the face of the bank was pretty well vegetated. The top of the bank had a little bit of mortality, likely due to some drought for this year. I am curious, and I think the consultants are on the line. Do we still have a 90% survival rate because that is the requirement? If we don't, I recommend you allow them to plant the spring via ongoing conditions. There was also some question about the marsh pillows. I thought they might not be doing that great, but I did hear from the engineer that the representatives who planted them said that they are doing good, and if they're here, we can talk about that. Because the benchmarks were just installed, we don't have data over the first 3 years after the installation of the wall on the elevation and composition of the marsh. So I would recommend a cert of compliance with ongoing conditions for an additional 3 years of monitoring. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I do think Don Monroe and maybe the Crawfords, somebody from Crawford might be on here that can address some of the comments too.
Yeah, sure. Through the chair, it's Don Monroe from Coastal Engineering. So Coastal Engineering's primary function was to permit and design and install the rock revetment. And our report shows that the beachfront actually in front of the revetment is doing very well, even though we didn't get data related to the benchmarks. The photographs, if you wanted me to show that on the screen here, just for reference. Let's see. So you can see this is the revetment that was constructed prior to any planting, prior to the marsh pillows being installed. But the beach here this is the beach relatively soon after the revetment was installed. Then this is after the marsh pillows were installed, the vegetation done at the top. You can see that this still looks pretty much the same, even though it's just kind of a different view. But you can see that the beach is staying pretty well intact. I think most of the current that is generated is beyond the dock, which is out of the picture here towards us as we look at the photo. So I think that the revetment portion, everything, and then when we took these photos right after the planting was done in 2020, everything looked pretty good. I have to defer to Jen Crawford, though. She's on from Crawford Land Management, because she was out there recently and also did a report based on some of the other plantings that we don't show in our photographs. So maybe I can put the stuff up on the screen for you, Jen, unless you want to share screen.
No, go ahead, Don. This is Jen Crawford for the record. So in regards to the planting, we completed all of the mitigation plantings in 2020. And when we first did our inspection, spring of 2022, we absolutely had 90% survival rate. Everything was looking really, really good, actually. Then once it got kicked back for the monitoring reports, we went out again after the summer season, and a lot of the clethra that had been thriving and working to establish themselves over the 2 years that they had been planted had just not been able to survive the heat and the drought through July and August. And it was very easy to put a timeline on that, as when you looked at the shrubs, as you can see in that picture, the clethra that just weren't able to survive. They had started to push flowers, but just couldn't complete flowering and couldn't complete the growing season. And so that would have put that timeline as of probably around July going into August for clethra to be flowering and then not make it. So at the time when compliance was first requested, it absolutely did meet that condition. But it just, as we come back to you after the summer season, it currently does not, because the clethra were not able to survive that. So there was kind of a time stamp in there where, unfortunately, the environmental conditions just didn't allow those clethra to continue.
Is the applicant willing to replant those, or potentially another species that might be a little bit more drought tolerant?
To my knowledge, and Don, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the client would be very amenable to working with the commission to replace anything necessary in order to bring that to 90% compliance under ongoing conditions, if possible.
Yeah, through the chair, I've been texting with Mark, and he, tonight before the hearing, and letting him know the things that might arise. And he is willing, because I think, Amy, he even indicated that when you and I were on site before we got the benchmarks out there, that he was willing to plant more in some of the areas that were a little sparse, although we didn't need to plant more, but he's willing and offering, and would definitely want monitoring and also any replacement plants, because he doesn't want to lose his investment either. So ongoing conditions are definitely a plus for this project, for sure.
Okay, so I've also gotten to know Mr. Russo throughout this process over the years, and I know he's very diligent about keeping up with all his, permits and everything. So, and we met on site, we saw some areas that were only not void because intentionally, just there's a little bit of runoff that kind of snaked through, and we talked about area that could be beefed up, and he was all for it. So I would recommend a cert of compliance with that, the clethra being replanted in the spring of 2023, either in kind with clethra or with another suitable native plant approved by me, and that we have an additional 3 years of reporting on marsh elevation and integrity of the revetment and whatnot, because we didn't get those prior.
Through the chair, one more point. If we do have some ongoing conditions for the COC, could we add, I think Mark and Jen and Nick were talking about invasive species management, just to make sure that nothing creeps back in. And maybe just a general maintenance for the fiber rolls that are on the other side of the dock, just to keep them tight against the bank and planted. And I'm hoping that you'd be able to entertain that as part of it, Amy.
Sorry, I forgot about the invasive part. I meant to mention that. And with the fiber rolls, our typical condition for integrity is that you'd be able to maintain a fiber roll array provided 50% or less of the structure was not in need of repair, so that it was really a repair and not a replacement. If you needed a replacement, it would have to be a larger filing.
Okay. Get it, yep.
I would recommend that.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions?
No, none for me.
Jim?
Yeah, the question I have is there any urgency for the issuance of a certificate of compliance right now, like maybe the property's being sold or something?
Through the chair, no, there's no urgency except that the original permit was issued in 2000 and, let me see, I have it up here. Just give me a sec, sorry.
No, I can find it too.
No, I mean, that's all right. It just, to me, sounds like there's, you know, a little bit more work that needs to be done before, you know, normally a certificate of compliance would be issued. So that's my only concern.
Well, through the chair, the permit actually has an expiration date of June 2021. So we'd be working outside of a permit, although there may be some extension due to COVID. But I think because it's minimal as to what we're talking about, it would be more appropriate to function under a certificate of compliance so that he can close the encumbrance on the property that is existing because of the order, since the order is really at the verge of expiring. I don't want us working out there not covered under some sort of permit.
Yeah, but couldn't the permit be extended?
The permit could be extended, but now you've extending a permit that has a revetment tied to it as well, and that structure is sound. And I'd like to see as an engineer that we close it out so that we've been able to make sure all payments to contractors are taken care of and stuff like that. So COC is necessary for that too. So I know that's not the commission's concern, but it is the client's concern and ours, us as engineers with relationships to contractors trying to get their final payments in.
So in other words, the need for the certificate of compliance is only to get contractors paid? Is that
No,
what I'm
needs,
hearing?
because the project is, in our minds, because it's been kicked down the road for various reasons, at the time when the certificate was originally filed, we were at the over 90%. And now we have a client who's definitely met with the agent a number of times, who's very diligent in wanting to make sure that he does it right. And we've guided this through a COC process for over a year. I know you only saw it 2 or 3 months ago, but the process started with on-site meetings with Amy a year ago. So I just don't think that it's fair to continue to drag it on when it can be handled under certificate of compliance with the Crawford Land Management working with your agent to replace anything that needs to be replaced that was in good shape prior to the drought that took place.
Okay, that's all I have, John.
Thank you. Mark?
Nothing good.
Brad?
Yeah, I have concerns also about issuing a cert at this point. There's a number of outstanding issues have been identified. There's been some good work to figure those out and to make progress on them, but it's not the commission dragging the feet here. Do we have one annual report on this?
We just received one.
Because I didn't see it in the Dropbox.
I don't know if it was an annual report or an update. Let me look at it.
Yeah.
I thought when I got it from Crawford, I put it in there.
I think there's good progress happening right now, but I think it's not prudent for this commission to issue a cert right tonight.
There's 2 annual reports in there, one from Coastal and one from Crawford Land Management. It's not our fault that you didn't get to read it, Brad. It was submitted. It was submitted a month ago.
Are you saying it's in our Dropbox?
I don't do
have my
that
computer in
part.
front of me.
That's not my function. I submit it to your agent, and then it's on you guys to make sure you guys look at it. But, I mean, I don't think that the classification that you painted this owner is or the contractors have been negligent in the work when we had a severe drought that caused some of the damage. I think the photographs that Jen has provided for the vegetation clearly shows that after they were planted and right prior to the drought that took place. We had 2 years of good vegetation. Now we have an owner that's willing to replace those as a result of the drought. So why not be a little bit lenient on the applicant who's willing to take care of whatever happened over the drought period so that we can close the project out? We're not saying we're not going to plant the stuff. We're going to plant. The owner's willing to plant. They've hired Crawford Land Management to do ongoing maintenance. They've hired us to do ongoing monitoring because we knew that was going to happen. So you'll still have everything in place through the agent and reporting for the next 3 years.
Thank you. You all set, Brad?
Yeah.
So I have just a question and then a comment. My question is about the plethora and whether if the plethora had maybe a couple more years before it got slammed with this year's drought, whether Jen, you would have expected, or Amy, you would have expected they would survive once they were fully established, or not? Are they a bit drought sensitive under any conditions? And they would need to be closer to some source of water to survive a drought like that.
I'll do Jen first.
I think that, they had 2 years of good establishment. We also, the last couple of years, it was also dry. I don't know. I honestly, I kind of feel like in my professional opinion, verdict is kind of out on that one, to be honest. I think if they were maybe in a little bit more of a shady condition or part shade condition, they probably would have sustained, but I think Clethra, I don't know, maybe in a few years they would have. Honestly, I don't really know, but we can definitely work with Amy on an alternative species that we know will survive those conditions. I mean, even next to it, there were a couple bayberry, not the majority, but just a couple of bayberry that also didn't make it through the drought. And they're a very, very drought tolerant species. They grow in dunes in full sun with very little water. So I don't know, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to voice my opinion about the business about closing this out and issuing a certificate of compliance. And I think there's a reason we would have for closing it out, issuing a certificate now, and that is because we're busy. And getting this off our books would take a little bit of load off the commission and off Amy, I think. I mean, she still has to pay attention.
We still get monitoring reports. We still
Right.
have a way to keep track of it.
I would just assume, see it closed out. I understand your reservations, but I just assume close it out and move on. Or issue the certificate of compliance and move on and rely on the applicants and those who are their advocates to follow through here. That's my opinion, but perhaps we can have a motion one way or another. So,
I'll move. I'd move to issue the certificate of compliance for SE 32-2328, with the provision that Amy has the ability to work with the owner and the land management company to replace the minor plantings that have passed.
Second.
Comments?
comments? Discussion?
Comments?
Yeah.
Perhaps the motion also to include the ongoing 3 years of monitoring of the salt marsh and the integrity of the wall by using the benchmarks that have now been established, to allow them to do invasive management and maintain, do minor maintenance on the fiber rolls.
So amendments, please.
Second against.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just want to make the point, the benchmark was part of the original order of conditions. It was not completed.
It is now.
It is
But
now,
yes, I understand.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
So
Thank you
I
very
think-
much.
I think that's 4 in favor, 3 opposed. Okay.
Okay.
So, next is 17 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-11, SE 32-2330, vegetation management. Can,
Permit was for vegetation management to maintain a view corridor, removal of 4 pitch pines close to the house, removal of a small stand of oak in poor health, and some native plantings. I did an inspection earlier this fall and then most recently and found the work to be in compliance. I would recommend a cert of compliance with ongoing conditions allowing for removal of invasive plants that crop up and maintaining the view corridor as permitted, as well as no fertilizer or chemical usage other than what might be needed to treat invasives and only by a licensed applicator. They've been very good about staying in touch with me, letting us know annually when they're doing their pruning. It's the correct type of pruning for the trees, not topping of any trees. So for my comments are gonna be the same for the next couple, so I'll just say that my comments that I made for this one are the same comments that I have for the next couple, and I would recommend certs of compliance for them all.
so, when you say the next couple, you say,
Run the table?
Well, I just meant you don't need to ask me for my comments for the next ones if you want. You can vote on them separately, or you could take them all together if you want.
but does that include 27 Soundview or not?
That includes 17 Soundview, 17 and 23 Soundview, 23 Soundview, and no, it does not include 27, I'm sorry. It's gonna be the same. You know, it would. I apologize. Yes. They're all related.
So do we have any discussion on any of those 4?
No?
No comment.
From here?
Anyone?
Nope.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we approve the issuance of a certificate of compliance for the following properties. 17 Soundview Road, map 23, parcel L1-11, SE 32-2330. 17 and 23 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-11 and L1-10, SE 32-2331, and 23 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-10, SE 32-2332, and 27 Soundview Road, map 26, parcel L1-9, SE 32-2406.
Second.
Discussion? I just have one item. You said map 23 for the first one. It's
Oh,
map 26. I'm just correcting that.
I'm sorry,
Just for
John.
the record.
I'll correct my motion
Okay.
accordingly. And then I would like to add to that motion with ongoing conditions allowing for removal of invasive plants that may crop up and the maintaining of the view corridor is permitted. That goes for all of those properties.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Passes unanimously. So now we're on 23 Betty's Lane, map 70, parcel S1-5, SE 32-2372 for a septic and retaining wall.
The septic was done in compliance as evidenced by the as-built plan as well as the Board of Health records. Some of the sweet pepper bush that they replanted does not appear to be alive, and I would recommend that you have them replant it in the spring of 2023. I would recommend a cert of compliance with that condition, and that no fertilizers or chemicals be used on the lot.
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve this issuance of a certificate of compliance for 23 Betty's Lane, map 70, parcel S1-5, SE 32-2372, with a condition with regard to replacement of shrubbery, as Amy had mentioned.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Passes unanimously. Can we do the next two?
We can do the next three together.
Oh, they're all.
Sorry, Andrew, I wasn't
Yeah,
I wasn't
okay.
motioning to you. Oh, you are here for Van Loo. I'm sorry. I thought you were here just for Witchmere. Okay.
No,
Okay, but
should
that's
ask you
different.
about that, but I'm here for
Okay.
this one.
I'm sorry.
I guess I don't get to leave after this one.
No, I mean, there's other reps here. There's other reps online.
Chance to move things along, though.
I do. Anna
I
gets me to move. I've been
apologize,
sitting, like you have been sitting back there for a few hours.
I did
No
not
worries.
realize.
Yep. Good evening.
Hi.
Hello.
Andrew Singer, attorney in Dennisport. This is, these two properties are the now long vacant property at the Andrews River, just at Route 28, across from Neil Road. There were a couple houses there over the years. One had a fire. Back in '03, '07, and 2012, the commission granted various orders of conditions to replace buildings, to redevelop buildings, to replace septics. Ultimately, as I know you know from the property, everything was removed from the property, and then it's just been vacant. And I've talked with Amy over the years several times. Any permits for it have lapsed. The property was actually sold to the abutter, and I am just trying to clean up these three old orders of conditions with requests for certificates of compliance. The buildings were obviously removed, and then it's just been vacant since.
Okay.
Took it out of my mouth. So I recommend certs for all three of them. And then the ongoing condition for the final one, 32-2094 of no fertilizers and chemicals, that covers it. We don't have to put those on the other two. I would notice, when I went by there today, recently, there appears to be a sailboat being stored back there. That should be removed, and it'll be in the letter for the sort of compliance.
It's probably
Sure.
by new owner. I can't speak to that, but
Yeah, it's farther back in the property, but,
there is a small portion of the property, as we've discussed, it's outside jurisdiction, but like 98% of the property is within.
riverfront, flood zone.
It's all sorts of stuff, but there is a piece on the east side that's outside.
Yeah, barely.
Yep.
Yes. Like you said, 98%. So I'd recommend certs for all three, with the ongoing condition about no fertilizers and chemicals on the last one.
Discussion.
No, nothing from me.
Had a lot back in the day when he's got permits.
And I did the last permits, with you guys
Yeah.
and others, and it just never happened.
I remember.
So this is easy.
No comment.
Okay, so can we have a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the issuance of certificate of compliance for the following properties. 744 and 746, Route 28, map 24, parcel P6, SE 32-1633. 746, Route 28, map 24, parcel P6-2, SE 32-1824, and 744 and 746 Route 28, map 24, parcel P6, SC 32-2094.
Second.
Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is a show cause hearing for 3 Skinnequit Road, failure to do land management plan required under SE 32-381. Who do we
So-
have here?
Well, want me to start and then
Yeah.
chime in?
Yes, please.
So a violation occurred in the winter of 2018-2019, where the majority of the slope down to the pond was cut. Approximately 2,250 square feet of area was cut down to a height of 12 to 24 inches, and then a number of canopy-sized trees near the water were topped. The owner, Mr. Petty, who I know is online, as well as Teresa from Blue Flax Design. Teresa was hired to do a land management and restoration plan, which was very thorough, and the commission approved it. Needless to say, no work has been done. During the property is in the process of transferring hands, and the fact that there is an outstanding order of conditions came up. I issued a enforcement letter for Mr. Petty to attend this show cause hearing for tonight. Just so the commission knows, back in 2019, he was fined $1,200 for 4 activities, and this was paid. What the purpose of tonight is for the commission to ask Mr. Petty and Teresa any questions that you might have, but how do we move this forward so the work can actually get done? So my recommendation for tonight, so I'll just talk and then I'll stop talking, is that you allow a change in plan to be submitted in time for our January 4th meeting. And this is because in the past few years, conditions have changed on the site, which Teresa can speak to as well. But we did see on the site when we did our inspection today, those trees and shrubs that were cut are now 6 to 7 feet tall. They're in need of some corrective pruning for their health, really. And not all the planting may need to be done. They'd also like to remove the English ivy this winter and potentially do that corrective pruning in preparation for planting. But I do think we need a change in plan. The permit is still active, and in speaking with Teresa, we think we can get to the January 4th meeting for that. The new owner, if the property transfers, would be responsible for carrying this plan out. I believe the new owners have been in touch with my office. They may even be on the line listening. For the prospective buyers, I should say. But to the end that no work has been done in 3 years, my recommendation would be additional fines for Mr. Petty for failure to do the work over the past few years. And it was work that was from a violation to begin with. You can either issue a $300 fine for not doing the monitoring reports and do that in bulk, or 6 reports should have been done by this time and none of them have been done, and each would constitute a violation. But I guess at this time, that's all I have to say. It's up to you if you want to ask questions or have them speak.
I think we should give the owner or his representatives a chance to speak and explain themselves.
Okay, hello, this is Mr. Petty, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When we got fined back in 2018, 2019, Blue Flags came down, they tagged some of the trees that was in the fall, and there was a start work again in the spring. The pandemic hit, nothing happened that year, and we kind of dropped the ball on it after that then. the house is being sold, I am gonna take care of the cost of, doing whatever work has to be done. The money will be put into escrow, and Blue Flags has a new plan, and, we'll abide by that plan.
Okay.
Teresa, would you talk a little bit about the conditions on the site real quick?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design. I was out to the site Monday and had an opportunity to take a look at what's happened since the original violation occurred. As Amy pointed out, the trees have continued to resprout vigorously. They're now about 6 to 7 feet high, the mix of oak and sassafras trees. There does continue to remain a significant amount of English ivy, as well as some burning bush and autumn olive that we would recommend removing. We would recommend thinning and pruning some of the regrowing sassafras oak trees, simply because they're so dense that if they continue to grow that way, there'll be no opportunity for any of them to be managed back to mature canopy-sized trees. Our original plan called for at least 5 of those oak trees to be managed back to canopy-sized trees, and the others to be managed as just coppice regenerating oak trees. So with some minor modifications, again, because the area that had originally been cleared is now growing back so thickly, a few of the plants, mainly 2 amelanchiers, 5 bayberry, and some witherrod viburnum that we had previously proposed to plant in that area, would actually displace regrowing native vegetation at this point. So we would recommend not planting those plants in the area. And we would be able to revise the plan to show that so that we can start moving forward. Our goal would be to remove the English ivy, do some of that pruning and thinning this winter, as well as remove the other invasive vegetation, the burning bush and the autumn olive, and then to follow up on that through the 3-year plan that was originally proposed. So our goal would be to submit a plan with that revised management and revised management dates to you to be heard at the January 4th hearing.
Okay, thank you. So do we have questions or comments from the commission? Wayne?
For me.
No comment.
I don't think so.
Brad?
Can I ask about some of the other violations outside of not doing the vegetation plan? The status of the dock, was the playground removed? The staircase?
The playground is still there. Hang on one second. I thought the playground, let me check the plan. We have a signed plan, a stamped plan with the playground allowing to stay.
Just trying to remember if we fined for.
We did fine for it.
Activities without authorization, and then let them keep them?
It is on the approved plans.
Same with the dock and the staircase?
So the dock was allowed, and it is permanent except for when it needs to be fixed, or replaced, it needs to become seasonal. That's how the conditions read there. The staircase has not been done. It looks like the original treads are still there. The playground was allowed.
Okay, so we're just talking about the vegetation plans?
It's the vegetation, which was
Okay, then.
kind of big.
Then I would support the fining option of $300 for the 6 reports not submitted. Yes.
Okay.
So the commission knows, we've now created, because we've had a couple of these where it's like it's been a few years and work hasn't been done on these projects that needs to get done. We've now created a spreadsheet for ourselves of projects and deadlines and things like that, specifically for enforcement issues. We may ask you to help keep track of those and do monitoring every once in a while, but. we're gonna do better about keeping on top of these.
I have a question about the original plan. Excuse me, but could people who are not speaking please mute themselves? There's a lot of noise on the line. Thank you. The original plan shows the buffer being measured from, I think it's labeled as the bordering vegetated wetland. And I believe that at least other properties on the pond there have, the banks have been classified as coastal banks because they're on a flood zone. And that wasn't the case for this property. It wasn't flagged when we initially considered its violations. And nor do I think it would make a big difference or any difference in what we're discussing tonight, but I would like to have that issue clarified so that we have at least a consistent approach to what is a coastal bank and what is not a coastal bank. We've had these discussions recently about other properties with varying outcomes, but I think it needs to be settled here, and perhaps
Mr. Petty,
if
can you
blue flag-
please keep yourself muted, Mr. Petty? We're getting a lot of background noise from you.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's going off on its own right now. I'm sorry.
No, we are muting you on purpose. If you could stay
Oh,
muted
okay.
temporarily,
All right.
that would be great, because we're getting a lot of feedback. We'll let you know if we need you. Okay? All right, good. Sorry. Yes. We talked about this, sorry, Teresa and Mr. Petty, I didn't have a chance to chat with you about this before tonight. Because Skinnequit Pond is connected via the Herring Run out to the Red River Marsh and the, Nantucket Sound, there is, while it isn't something necessarily, it's not related to the planting so much, but it is, going forward on this property, potentially a jurisdictional thing about where edges of wetland lines being coastal bank or what it was approved as was an inland bank, which is typical around ponds. But this is a unique pond in that it is connected to the Herring Run, connected to to Nantucket Sound. So while it's not a sediment source coastal bank, it could potentially be a coastal bank to protect storm damage prevention, flood control. My recommendation at this time is that I be in touch first with our circuit rider over at Mass DEP to do a read on this and see. If not, I can ask Greg Berman as well, his interpretation of this. And we have other methods, but I mean, we approved it as an inland bank and bordering vegetated wetland. But I do see John's point of the question of the coastal bank. We recently had a project that was on the Herring Run part of this river, and it was very clearly a coastal bank there. So, but when you turn into a freshwater pond, how does that all work out? So I was trying to think of other ponds in Harwich where we have a similar situation.
I've never heard of that.
And we don't, because even the West Reservoir, it's cut off by that flume. So it's an interesting question, and I want to find out. We'll
Okay,
work to,
thank you.
Isn't
on
it
our
based
end, we'll work to
tidelands?
figure that out.
Skinnecook Pond is itself in a flood zone.
Yeah.
But tidelands, I think the coastal bank is
Well,
predicated.
Doesn't have to be tidelands, it could flood zone, and it is hydrically connected
Yeah.
with surface water,
I think I need
even
to
though
look-
it's man-made, that run. Yeah.
Well, it needs to be one way or the other, and it's
Right.
inconsistent right now, so
Yeah.
it would be great if we could just clarify which way it goes.
I will ask some of the professionals I know and get back to you.
Great, thank you. So where are we here? We have a proposal from Brad.
If I could ask, are we executing an enforcement order here on this tonight? or just trying to get compliance to the prior?
I wouldn't issue necessarily an enforcement order. I think they're, been responsive to my initial letter of appearing tonight. I've spoken with Teresa. We've discussed that the January 4th meeting is feasible for them coming forward with a change in plan since this permit is still active. I would just recommend fines if you see fit, but a follow-up letter solidifying that a change in plan is going to be due for the January 4th meeting. And yeah, I'm comfortable with that method rather than.
Okay. Well, I'll move that we issue fines for non-compliance of Special Condition 8 under SE 32-2381 for 3 Skinnequit Road, $300 for failure to submit biannual reports over a 3-year period totaling 6 reports, therefore fines of $1,800.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, so that's
611.
511.
Correct. I don't do math after 9 o'clock.
Okay.
That's my job as the chairman.
Sorry, thank you. All right, we will be in touch via writing and emails, okay?
We don't need further action tonight.
No, you don't need further action.
Okay. So next on the agenda is discussion and possible vote on proposed changes to Witchmere HCP, which someone can explain to us what that acronym is.
Keep going, I'll be back in 1 minute.
Who do we have representing Witchmere?
Hello, Jonathan Schuster with SWCA on behalf of Witchmere Beach Club and Witchmere Harbor Realty.
Okay, thank you. Well, go ahead.
Sure. So there's basically 3 items that I wanted to bring up, and one of them is more of an immediate kind of response or action item that we're looking for on the part of your commission. So we were approached by the state as potentially being a very good candidate for a habitat conservation plan regarding piping plover. This is a relatively new, like within the past decade, system whereby the federal government, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, grants the state the authority for take on certain beaches. So this would be, permitted impacts to areas where piping plovers typically nest. And that's the HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan. However, before we get to that, we submitted a beach management plan, or BMP, and that is the bulk of what was mailed to you that you have in front of you. So the most immediate action item would be to see if your commission could issue a statement that we could relay to NHESP, basically saying, yes, this beach management plan looks fine. There's no real regulatory concerns when it comes to your jurisdictional areas, the Wetlands Protection Act, and your bylaw. So in essence, the beach management plan just codifies the existing protections that have been in place for piping plovers at the site for many, many years. So that's the symbolic fencing, that's the management by Mass Audubon that we plan on continuing with, and Audubon is going to be a partner on this and is very much in favor of us pursuing this course, as it adds kind of flexibility for all parties. It includes an education component. It includes a lot of elements there. And if I could share my screen, let's see. So I hope you're seeing my screen now. So this is one of the figures from the beach management plan. It just shows overlaid, the symbolic fencing that was there in 2021 and 2022. So again, under the BMP, there's no ask for a reduction in fencing. There is beach raking, which your commission reviewed under the 2019 permit. And if you look at these sort of heavier polygons to the east and west, these are beach grass planting areas, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Under the beach management plan, we're not proposing any changes to those. We kind of wanted to keep things distinct. So again, number one would just be, what is the commission's take on the beach management plan? Could we get something in writing, hopefully by early next week as we're filing soon? Just something to the effect that, this beach management plan codifies the existing management of the site. And actually, Natural Heritage wants to move towards every site having one of these beach management plans. So that's sort of item one. Item two, at the beginning of the packet of materials I gave you, were a couple conceptual figures related to the habitat conservation plan, where we would be seeking relief from the typical buffers and offsets and regulatory constraints regarding shorebirds. So this is something that has yet to be filed. We wanted to run it by you. And either your commission, could decide that, as long as Natural Heritage is reviewing it, you don't necessarily see, too much of an issue with that. Here's just an example. So the blue would be sort of, what fencing is there on April 1st. The red is a conceptual 20% reduction in fencing. And this is something we intend to submit next week. So either you could comment just on the beach management plan, or if you want to save time, because we would be at your next hearing, hopefully, with a giant stack of paper and the HCP, we would be more formally talking to you about that. The third item, and sorry feel free to interrupt me if there's questions in the meantime, is that we do intend eventually and soon to request an amendment to the prior order of conditions, which is still active relative to the beach plantings. So these two blocks of plantings, both Witchmere and the state and Audubon, are sort of all in agreement that there's not necessarily rhyme or reason to why beach grass was planted in the polygon that it was. Amy has been out to the site and walked it with Mike Charlotte and Tucker Dutcher of Witchmere. And that's something that your commission could anticipate, coming probably early in 2023. I just made the decision to decouple it from this whole process since we're sort of talking about different things here. So that's basically those three items I wanted to bring up, with the response to the BMP being the most immediate and important. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that.
Thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
I am sorry if I missed part of it at the very beginning. What is the purpose of, other than of having two? What is, between the HCP and the BMP? They, in some ways, I haven't seen the HCP yet, so I can't make any recommendations at that time. But are they complementary to each other? Is there disparity between the documents? I just don't, I guess, we haven't seen this yet. This is a new thing. So what's the purpose? Why do we need two documents, essentially? What are the differences? Why do we need both of them?
Sure. So in some ways, Witchmere is blazing a trail for smaller sites. Witchmere is a very productive site with 5 pairs of plover, dozens of pairs of least tern on what's a fairly small area. So other sites that have entered into this HCP plan include, like Nauset, Sandy Neck, big beaches with a lot of moving parts and vehicles being escorted past chicks. The state wants to move. So first off, in terms of the BMP, the state ideally, NHESP ideally wants every person or every entity that has plovers or terns nesting on their property and that manages the property properly to have a beach management plan. So it's sort of this necessary step if we want to enter into this, system whereby we would be getting, having a take on the property. The beach management plan is this formality. It's this first step where we put everything down on paper, all the signage, we erect no dog signs, no kite flying, no kite boarding, no beach bikes, this much buffer off of nests. The beach management plan codifies everything done to a T to comply with the federal regulatory guidelines for piping plover, which is federally listed, as well as the state listed lease term. So the HCP is where we ask for the exemption. And so you don't have that in front of you right now. You just have a couple sketches, and what I'm showing now on the screen you haven't seen. It's just, a conceptual drawing. It's a conceptual sketch. So if the commission doesn't feel comfortable about commenting on the HCP, that's fine. The most immediate is just the beach management plan and getting a stamp of approval that, okay, the same old beach raking, the same old monitoring regime, the same old fencing, just put down in writing with all these figures and bells and whistles, and it's a MISA checklist, meets the sniff test of the commission in terms of, wetland resources and your jurisdiction. If you feel comfortable also making a comment and saying, any conceptual reduction in fencing or take that would be permitted by the state, as long as that is in place, we would feel comfortable with the HCP. Theoretically, you could put that in the same letter, and I wouldn't return at the next meeting to present that. So it's sort of, whatever the commission's comfortable with that sort of priority based on the timeline of filing.
Yeah. So I would agree that what you've outlined, what you gave us in the beach management plan, accurately codifies your existing activities as you've done them on the site since I've been here, which has been over 10 years. It's basically what they do and what they would keep proposing to do. Fencing, reporting to natural heritage, being in compliance with public and pedestrian, being in compliance with MISA, no dog policy. That I do think their beach management plan that they've shown depicts what they've done and what they need to continue to do. I would not be comfortable recommending to you since you have, either myself or you has seen the habitat conservation plan, to tie that in to a letter of support tonight. I would feel comfortable to write a letter on the commission's behalf, and you would see it before it went out, that the beach management plan accurately shows or accurately depicts what they're currently doing on the site and what they need to continue doing going forward in terms of regulatory compliance. But not the second piece. I think they need to come back, they need to come to our next meeting, available meeting for that. So not agreeing, I do not recommend, without really reviewing any reduction in, or recommending any reduction in fencing, things like that. We just simply haven't seen it yet.
Okay, thank you. I think we need comments from commissioners.
No comment.
I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Mark?
I agree with Amy for the most part, but I'm having a little problem getting on board with this, just in general. To me, this just seems like doubling down of regulation, and frankly, I don't see the reason for it. And, I'm a very reluctant supporter of what we're talking about.
Thank you. Brad?
I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Stan?
Same with it.
Okay, so I have a couple comments, and one is gonna seem pretty petty, but when you give us, I mean, this isn't a huge thing, but it's a big document, and you pepper it with acronyms. I'm sorry, I just have an objection to that. You can, if you've been sitting here all night, we've had to wade through a whole bunch of stuff, and reading all this stuff and actually being prepared means what you want to do is make this as cleanly comprehensible and quickly comprehensible to us as possible, which means don't use acronyms unless they're completely commonly understood acronyms. Setting that aside, I pretty much agree with Amy, except that I read through this whole thing, and I'm not, peppered in with all of this discussion is mentions of changes you're making to how you're using the space, changes you're proposing to make. You know, the most obvious one is reducing the area that is symbolically fenced, which it's unclear to me at this point whether that would be part of what we would be agreeing with, but if we're writing a letter, we're saying, from my point of view, we would be saying very explicitly, we're not agreeing to any reduction in the space that is symbolically fenced and provided to the piping plovers. And it's just not clear to me whether that's the case, if we're just blanket endorsing this document.
Not under the BMP, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan. Under the BMP, you are, it seems, when I read through it, I think the third time today, you're agreeing to existing conditions and existing activities that they have happened. It is in the, so I went through it, I just leafed through it again now just to make sure. None of these figures show reduction in this BMP. In your cover letter to this whole packet, with the cover letter and the figure afterwards, there it shows the conceptual expanded area for guest use and 60% of plover and tern habitat retained. That I wouldn't endorse at this time. It's just simple, it seems to be part of your cover letter. That was a cover letter that covered HCP and BMP. But the actual BMP, which starts on this blue page, does not show any reduction. And it just codifies what is happening, has happened on the site. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct. That, yeah, the BMP is business as usual. If anything, it is a more sort of full-throated implementation of the regulations in sort of an idealized and perfected way. And it does allude to the HCP as in we are filing this BMP because we anticipate filing this other thing. But the BMP itself has no, you know, it's the regulations to a T, is what it is.
And my other comment or question is about the beach grass business. And I'm trying to remember when we went through this, whenever that was, 2018 or something?
That was in 2019.
I think the original recommendation was to plant all that stuff on the western border of the property, no? And that there was an objection to doing that, and that's why it ended up in the south.
Oh, an original?
But
Yeah, it was to basically make habitat contiguous, so not have like these little islands of beach grass. It would be ideal to do it on the western side of the property, but then you butt it up to town property of Merkle Beach. They did a little bit there. They did a small portion there. They did the majority abutting kind of the jetty there. And I know going forward, what I talked about with Tucker and Mike Charlotte over at Witchmere is naturalizing that a little bit more. It's not a block, making it more of a natural dune-like vegetated area, but that's forthcoming for you, for your consideration. Yes, you are correct, John. We had wanted more on the other side.
Okay, so where are we now? There's been a request that we,
I recommend that you instruct me to write a comment letter, basically saying that you're in agreement with the beach management plan, which is not a plan moving forward. It's just what has happened and what's happening now. It's not going forward, and that it's just basically stating accurately what's happened on the site. And that you will be reviewing shortly the Habitat Conservation Plan, and we'll make a follow-up comment letter for that document.
Do we have an opportunity to review that letter before it's submitted?
Yes.
So, i.e., prior to our next meeting?
No.
Like you'll
It
send it?
wouldn't, we don't have a meeting prior, well, they
want it by when?
want it by next week, but
But
I could email it to you, but you cannot have conversation about it because we don't have a meeting. I would email it to you for your comment directly to me. I understand the concern.
And what is the nature of, why is this such a pressing thing that it has to be done next week? I think it would have been preferable for the commission to have a bit more time to consider this, pretty substantial proposal. Why were you waiting until the last minute to bring it to us?
If I may, so the beach management plan is, again, in some ways, in the eyes of NHESP, rare species folks, it's this formality that we're getting through before we file our habitat conservation plan. So the BMP was filed with the state in November. So after they had done some review, they got back to us with comment, and they told me that they would appreciate some comment from your commission relative to, just your agreement or lack of agreement that it meets the criteria, that there's no impacts to wetlands. It's basically everything that's been happening at the site up till now, written in great detail. As you can see, it's a lot of pages. I think where your commission will probably want to review more in depth is the HCP, which you haven't received yet. So I totally appreciate that, you want to be able to see that. So this was a comment from the state after we had submitted that they would like town comment from your commission, and that's why there was the delay. And perhaps that's my error. I should have, reached out initially. I think, Amy, we had been corresponding a bit about, generally what the plan was for Witchmere, but yeah, my apologies if that timeline has been lacking.
I think the question is what is pressing for next week? What's your deadline?
So the deadline is that by, I think it's actually December, might be December 20th or somewhere in there, we're reaching our end of clock for MISA review for the beach management plan. So all along we've been addressing, the state's comments, beefing up, ways that, Witchmere can better engage the public, prevent disruption to the birds, all these little nitty-gritty things. And one of the action items was receiving town feedback, just because, we are in your jurisdiction, obviously. Just that this beach management plan has been submitted and reviewed. So initially I had reached out for, an administrative kind of solution. Amy, rightly so, wants you to have the chance to see it. So I appreciate that, it might feel rushed. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about specifically the beach management plan. So not the reduction in fencing, but just the formalization of everything that's been happening on the site for, decades, and everything that formally that we would be moving forward with were it not for the HCP.
Jim?
Yeah, my question then is, if you say that the close of the review is around the 20th, our next meeting is the 21st. If Amy prepared a draft letter to get out to us prior to the meeting, and we had a chance to review it and discuss it at the meeting on the 21st, if we approve that draft, Amy could get it out to you like the next day. Would that be a problem?
I'm not 100% sure that that could be a solution. One, I don't know if it's a viable option whereby I could share a draft with the commission, just sort of a general indication, and then follow up with the promise of, hey, this is the approved formal letter that you'll be approving on the 21st. If that's, a solution that you're open to, the state is very flexible. But ideally, I, was hoping to receive, just a quick statement next week. But again, I'll defer to you on how you want to move forward with that.
Because my concern was that this was just presented to us at this meeting for discussion. I don't, from my point of view as a member of the commission, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to, ask for a draft before the next meeting, discuss it at the next meeting, and then, again, if we approve it, Amy could get it out to you the next day. I don't think that's being unreasonable to ask for that. And I do not feel comfortable sharing with you a draft before we've had a chance to review it.
Understood.
Amy?
I would say if the commission doesn't feel comfortable, and it is it's a big deal. It's gonna be used as part of a future, future planning. I actually don't feel comfortable doing it like drafting it and emailing it to you. I would like you to see it at the next meeting.
I
So,
think that's-
I'm sorry about your timeline. Unfortunately, that's not our problem.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I'm not, sorry, that I didn't mean to be harsh about that. It's 10 o'clock at night. But we will work with you to the best we can. If you have drafts and we can work on language prior, and I would get it out as soon as possible after that next meeting, but the commission clearly wants to see it first before, okay?
Fair enough. I'll let the state know about that timeline, and you'll be seeing the draft HCP materials. So that'll be a bigger stack of materials than what's in front of you now very soon, like next week.
All right, it's a
For the
lighter
following
agenda
meeting.
next time, which will be helpful. We had a lot to review for tonight from our other hearings. So we're gonna put
Understood.
this on for 12/21.
Okay.
Great.
We don't need to vote on this,
You don't need to
right?
vote.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
So, we have update on Old Coach Lane, update on ongoing management tasks, and 3 minutes here, although all I saw were 2
There's
cents.
2, yeah.
Given the lateness of the hour, maybe you can give us a very quick update on Old Coach,
I will.
and we can go to the minutes, because we need to approve minutes. And as much as I hate to do it, unless somebody violently objects, defer the updates
Yeah, next
until
meeting.
next time.
I don't have much after this, getting ready for this meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Old Coach, I told her she didn't have to be here. I hope that's okay.
They have, just sign it.
I'm gonna create an assembly line here. The owner's in compliance with where the site needs to be at this point in the winter. She was 2 days off of her deadline, but it was not her fault. Her deadline was the 21st, I think it was the 23rd, that she had all the material removed, all the loam down, all the blanket, the seed, everything done. But it was a tight time frame to get contractors in there. She kept in touch with me constantly and let me know what was going on. So she's met her deadline to getting the site where it needs to be. So the stone, shell, landscape timbers have all been removed. Area stabilized with jute matting and seeded. She's hired Lynn Hamlin to help her with a revegetation plan and outermost land survey to do a site plan for her. She's due with an after-the-fact notice of intent by February 1st. I told her she didn't have to be present tonight, so that's that.
Okay.
There are 2 sets of minutes. Melissa did say, one of them just got in today, so if you only want to feel comfortable doing June 1st, which has been in there a while, that's fine, or if you want to do both, you can.
I reviewed the 2 Junes, and the only comment I have is June 15th, it doesn't identify the chair. So a pretty minor comment, but
Does identify what?
does not identify who the chair was
Oh.
on that given night.
I will say that. We will do that.
I think it was Jim, but I forget. It was,
There was one night in June that I did it, that's probably it.
yeah.
Yeah, because,
Just, yeah, just so I,
Neither Ernie nor I was there.
right.
yeah.
I actually
Yeah, it
have
would have
a,
been Jim.
I have a related comment
Yeah,
that applies to all minutes,
yep,
which is, I was reviewing open meeting stuff recently, specifically the part about minutes, and I have various comments about it, but one thing it says very distinctly in there is that you need to identify all members, those present and not. So,
so not present.
and it's related to this comment that
Yep,
you should list all the members, every
Got it.
meeting, in the minutes,
Yeah.
and identify who's there and who's not.
Ernie and John. Thank you for that.
So any other comments about those meetings, minutes? And remind me, those of us who weren't there, voting on approving the minutes? Because I wasn't there on June 15.
Technically, if you don't, if we have a quorum of others, then you don't have to vote.
Okay.
If we have a quorum issue, it is legal to vote on them.
It is legal.
Yeah, because sometimes we review minutes, not, luckily, we're catching up gradually, but it could be minutes that are 3 years old that nobody's been here for. Somebody has to approve them.
Same with OOCs, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, same thing.
same thing.
Certs.
Yep. All right, well, if you're comfortable with both sets, go for it.
I
Okay.
move we accept the meetings for June 1st, 2022, and June 15th, 2022, with 2 edits as
Yep.
commented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Passes. Okay, any other motions anybody wants to make?
Nice job, Chair.
Congratulations.
Good.
Yes, nice
Vote
job.
or not.
Trial by fire, I
You
guess.
did well, yeah.
Yeah, this was a trial by fire.
Thank you, that's what I was looking
And
for.
I'll second that.
Aye.
All right, let me lay these out for you. Yeah, this was trial by fire tonight.
Tough.